of our hearts here as well. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I will now call to order the school board workshop for April 23rd, 2024. Looking to see if we have anybody joining us from the community. Doesn't look like it. So we'll just jump right into business. Our first item is to review the draft agenda for the regular school board meeting on May 2nd. Mr. Ross.
Madam Chair, before we start, I'm going to take a little bit of liberty this morning. This is Administrative Professional Week, and tomorrow is Administrative Professional Day. And our administrative professional, as you guys know, is Bonnie Lenora. Bonnie would probably be saying, I wish he didn't talk about this now.
Correct.
But I'll just say this, nobody approaches their work with more of a servant's heart, and there's nobody that I feel more comfortable answering the phone and representing Clay County schools, especially in difficult situations. Instills confidence easily in every single person that calls. Couldn't do it without her or Sue. Bonnie O'Nora. Big round of applause for Bonnie. I know, she's saying, I wish she really didn't say that. I can see it in her face. Bonnie's super sweet, too. So does a great job. Okay, for the agenda itself, I'm going to give the board fair warning that May is the last board meeting in which students are actually in school. So you go to June, students aren't around anymore. So there will be celebrations. There'll be a lot of celebrations. There'll be a lot of students there at this board meeting. So several of those, you got the, we're going to have somebody from Cogni about our accreditation. You guys can read through it. I don't need to. Let me assure you that we did everything we could to limit it to, for example, on one particular item, they wanted to bring 125 people. We limited it to 25. So I just wanted to say that great effort was put in restricting it to what it's going to be, but it still is a lot. No matter how you shake it when you look at all of the items. But you know what? It's the last board meeting of the school year, and for students, it's a special event to be there in front of the school board. So in response to that, there is no school showcase. That's kind of the trade-off in that last week. So just be prepared for that. Just want to make sure that you're aware. And I set the proper expectations before we had that meeting, okay? So we're on to the discussion item. There's one discussion item. It is the very last item, which is the public hearing for our policy on challenge materials and the reconsideration or review of library materials. That public hearing is on this agenda. Remember, we went ahead and we already advertised it on the previous agenda. Now that comes up. Is there any questions or comments on that particular item? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on. The first item is the minutes. There should be no challenges to the minutes of that. The second item is controlled open enrollment. Just a couple of things about controlled open enrollment. The rules for controlled open enrollment have changed over the years. Remember, under Florida Statute 1002.31, schools that have less than 80% capacity, they're put on the district website every 12 weeks. There's a listing of when those dates are. Originally, when the law was first formed, that was not the case. It was for the whole year. And then in 2022, the law changed, and it said every 12 weeks, you have to reassess where you are and where open seats are, then you have to advertise those, and there's a process by which people apply to do that, and that information is all contained within this item called controlled open enrollment. Next is the school board member out-of-county travel expenses for FSBA and FAD's annual summer conference. That's June 5th through 7th. Bonnie puts that on there in case somebody does want to go to that event. It would have already been voted on by the board, and therefore we're in good standing for advertising that. Doesn't mean you are going, it just means we have to advertise it in case you are going. That's why this item is on the agenda. I will call to your attention that I believe the board meeting is which day?
That Thursday.
That Thursday during this time frame, something to consider. Next is the personnel consent agenda. There will be items, of course, added to this within the 48-hour period. Remember, one of our goals as an organization was to revise every single job description within an 18-month time frame. That was a goal set months ago. So that's why we've been bringing chunks, and there'll be another chunk that will be added to that. Next, we have the renewal of the list of positions. One of the things that we do for primarily our bus drivers who have to get a physical as part of their job, we ask physicians in the local area if they'd be willing to do that. They don't exactly like jump out, because for them it's not like a money-making type of thing, it's more of a service thing. We do try to spread it among the community so that, you know, somebody from Keystone, for example, would have a relatively close thing. I know we send out like 50 letters to various organizations, say, hey, would you be willing to do this? And here are the ones that were willing to do that, and their cost or their price. Of course, they get to set their cost and price. Those are all reasonable, so to speak, and to have a variety for the employee to go to. So that's how that works. Next, we have the K-12 academic services out-of-state overnight travel. That's pretty routine. Next is a data sharing agreement between the school board and the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Florida. The Boys and Girls Club have been a great partner for us for free. You know, students can attend that program. The program provides transportation, food. It's a great opportunity for students and their families. Part of that is that they like to do a piece on student attendance, grades, and discipline, like a mentoring type of piece. In order to do that, they need information from our system. So under controlled access to that, this is what the agreement essentially does for the Boys and Girls Club, to have controlled access to that, so it'll help them in their mission with our students. I've heard nothing but good things about that program as we look to expand that in the future. Next is approval of the 3-year Florida Virtual School curriculum. So when a student takes a course from CDA, the curriculum is actually Florida Virtual School curriculum that our teachers use under a franchising agreement. So for example, there's a whole list of classes towards the back, and it says how much they cost. So for example, English 1 says $45. So for us to use their curriculum, when one of our students takes the course, it's their curriculum, and at a certain point, I think it's 21 days in, that's when we're responsible to pay. The big challenge for virtual school, because we have, let's see, 14,802 classes so far have been taken through virtual school. So we are paying a fee for each one of those classes. We also get FTE for each one of those classes. But unlike regular, I'm going to call it regular school and virtual school, in regular school, you receive FTE regardless of the grade that the student receives in the class, right? So if the student gets an A in the class, the district receives the FTE amount. If the student gets an F in the class, the district receives that amount. In virtual school, if you don't complete the class and pass the class, you get nothing.
Yeah.
Right, so one of the things that I'm proud of is that we've maximized the finances for CVA to the greatest extent possible. You're talking about almost 15,000 classes that we're paying for. The amount that we receive is just shy of $500. So you take the 500 per se, minus the 45 in costs, and that would be what the district receives in that kind of simple example. But the big difference is you have to complete the course. The challenge for virtual school is what mechanisms do you have in place to get the kid to do the work, right? If you're the teacher in the classroom, you can use proximity and hover over them and all of those kinds of things. When they're virtual, it makes it more difficult, so it takes specialized training processes in place in order to maximize the funding for that. So I thought a little bit of an explanation. It's their curriculum, not ours, because it's professionally vetted. Okay, our teachers teach it. We receive money from the state only if they pass it, and the cost of each course is in this booklet in front of you.
Ms. Borowski, I just attended the Advanced Finance Forum, and they spent a little bit of time, and I have asked Dr. Legucco to prepare some documents for me for our budget meeting, I believe, which is next month. So, as of this year, there is no virtual school program requirement. They actually got rid of that, right? It's under Florida Statute 1012.22, public school. And I've asked her for documents about what you were saying, you know, our cost versus just offering, letting kids go to Florida virtual versus having our own CBA, the combination of CBA and virtual schools. So I asked her to prepare some documents so that the board can see the budget analysis of actually having a CBA versus just having a Florida virtual school. And so I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that it's not a requirement anymore for us to have a virtual program in Clay County. And so it might be good information for us to have.
It'd be great information, because the more we learn, the better off we are. The challenge with Florida Virtual School versus CBA, if the child goes to Florida Virtual School, you receive nothing. So that is money out the door. So if you took 500 times the almost 15,000, whatever that number is, that's the net loss that you would have. I don't know what that math turns out to be. I'm not good at mental math. I don't have the calculator in front of me. So it would be 500 times 15,000, whatever that number is, would be the loss. That's one of the reasons why we have a franchise.
Yeah.
But hopefully you'll see that.
Well, I'm looking more for, I mean, that's like based on class, you know, how much we get, how much we spend or have to pay, but there's a lot of overall structural costs and program costs when you have a CBA school, so I think it'd be good for us to see, that's all.
All right, awesome. The next item is the iReady Math K-5. Remember, we had a presentation months ago before this item came forward. Govinda Kaur was the presenter, the math specialist, that she came forward. Now we're bringing the contract to you for this. This is one of the only supplemental programs that we have for Math K-5 in our county, and I'm certainly recommending approval of this contract. Next, we have an affiliation agreement for interns with UCF. That's the standard agreement. We have agreements with 22 different schools, and we do a lot when it comes to recruitment of teachers. I thought I'd take a quick minute because we have an abbreviated agenda this morning related to this, and just kind of tell you a couple things that we do related to the recruitment of teachers. I know that you all realize that there's a nationwide teacher shortage. Many people didn't realize that there's a whole mechanism of how you recruit teachers, because you're competing against so many people out there, all for the same folks, right? So this year, Human Resources has been to 44 job fairs. Hope you heard that, 44 actual job fairs they've been at. We've hired about 450 teachers so far this year. Typically, we hire about 395 teachers in a year, historically going back to my days in Human Resources. So you are seeing an uptick in the number of teachers hired, and we're doing a good job with that. The challenge is that many of the teachers that get hired, people that care about kids, want to do a good job, but lack the experience or the skills, and therefore need additional support in order to ensure their success. You can't just give them some keys in a classroom and say, go get them, Tiger. Right? That's kind of the way it was when I was a teacher, maybe when you were a teacher too. And, you know, that's kind of the way it was. Now you need all kinds of additional support. Sometimes people don't view jobs as long, particularly young folks, and I guess I can say this because I'm no longer in the young folk category. They sometimes don't view jobs as like a long-term type of career. They only view it as like a couple-year thing. And so we've had to adjust as an organization for the types of supports that we provide individuals, given the current environment that we're in, and it becomes a real thing. So we do have a job fair coming up. We invite you all there. Anybody listening? We want you. Look at the camera. We want you. Okay. It is May 6th at the TTC. Come on out. We'd love to talk to you and hire you in Clay County District Schools. Many people, board members in particular, probably didn't realize there's a whole district recruitment plan. It's a document on the website there. Looks like 30 pages of stuff explaining how we recruit teachers, where we go, what we do. All of that kind of stuff is out there. HR does a tremendous job on that. They finally got a good leader in that department, and so it's one of those things we should all be promoting and touting. Clay County District Schools is a great place to work. You've heard me say this many times. Clay County is a great place to live. It's a great place to work, and it's a great place for kids to go to school. We should be promoting that because that helps us with the recruitment of our folks. Any questions about teacher recruitment, or all recruitment really?
And it's a highly functioning district. I just want to point that out.
Yes.
Highly functioning. I love it. And growing.
So next is the Library Media Services Manual. You know that we've already been working on the policy for objections and reconsideration for that, and the public hearing is there. Part of the process would be there's other stuff required in the law that are included within this manual. Things like deselection of materials, the weeding of materials in statute. This puts us in compliance with that, and I believe has dealt with some of the things that they want. Notice the old manual was like 45 pages. This is down to 15-ish related to that. But I did want to call your attention to, at the back, it talks about collection access for students. And we had a discussion here among the board about student access to that. And there in black and white, it certainly points out the current access for students. You had asked us to find a way for that to occur electronically. We feel really good about that. Mr. Karen's in the back there. So when a parent goes to go into parent view, the first thing that they would have to do is make their selection, their choice, as to what access they want for their kid. Not only for this, but for the health care piece of that, to be treated in the clinic was another one. There's 3 or 4 things that are part of that. In addition, we've done a drive since our last meeting and talking about this. We've done a drive and track all of the parent view accounts for each school. I was out to celebrate with the record secretaries, what day was that?
Last Friday.
You know, as to what schools have 100% and of that, and I asked the lady from Oak Leaf Junior High, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay? And I asked the record secretary, I said, what do you do? Like, what's your strategy? Tell us the secret sauce. And she said, I just bombard them with information, and then they ask me, if I fill this out, will you not contact me anymore? And she says yes to fill it out. And I thought, that's a brilliant strategy related to that. But we do recognize that one of the challenges is that engagement of folks is important, and you certainly want to engage people, but not everybody accepts the invitation be engaged. So kind of like the horse that you lead to water and then you pull the reins down, then you take the water and start to throw the water up into the, up. And sometimes, even with all of those efforts, there's still a very small percentage that don't drink the water regardless of that. So the purpose of that is just to bring this all forward to you. It talks about general access, unlimited access, limited access, no access in emails, because it's not a binary choice. Parents have 5 choices, and all throughout both the policy that you passed, that the public hearing is on, and this manual, the idea of parental rights, parental choice is laden within that. Parents choose which access they want for their child.
So Mr. Brodsky,
Yes, ma'am.
as you know, I've really worked hard on this particular item, and I appreciate the shrinking down of a very, very long, outdated manual and getting it down to 6 pages. So the board, we have a draft in front of us of the procedures manual. And what I want to say is this. A procedures manual is the teeth for our policy. It is the thing that makes sure that our policy is Loctite across the entire county. This procedures manual is lacking some safeguards for students, and there are areas that are not aligned with our new policy. And I have them outlined here. So some of it, the manual does not address procedures for mature content books designated through our policy as a mature content book. It doesn't acknowledge how we're going to do reassignments in Destiny, how what we're going to tell parents when we send an email. These were all in the policy, and the procedures missing for those. It doesn't give procedures on what to do with the mature content books, as our policy specifically states, being pulled immediately. We don't know where they're going to put them. We don't know what's going to happen to them. It should state in an email, I have not seen what we're going to procedurally send to parents when they want to know what their child is checking out. It doesn't say where mature materials will be held. Are we keeping the mature materials on the shelf? How are they going to be labeled? How are we going to flag them? Who's changing the descriptions in Destiny? The procedures for how we will get permission to notify parents, Mr. Brodsky did tell you, it will be there. However, I want the board to know that on the first day of school, students are all allowed in the library. If their parent never goes into the portal, they'll never know about this particular form that we've agreed on. So it is much like an opt-out. Opt-in means we make sure the parents know that there is mature content, especially in the secondary library, prior to their child entering. I wanted you to make sure you understand that the kids are allowed in the library without this form being signed. It lacks procedures and details on how we will train curriculum councils, school members on community standards. In fact, the entire thing is lacking a community standard rubric. We know descriptions are wrong in Destiny. I do believe I had a conversation with someone because we know that the publishers, whoever they buy from, send descriptions for books. The descriptions could be uploaded differently from every school, have a different description for the same book. Who's going to make sure? Is it going to be a district personnel that's going to update the young adult descriptions so that parents have a better understanding of what their kids are checking out? The manual does not address what we're doing with the materials once we remove them for 847. Where do we send them? Are we burning them? There's just a lot of the teeth is missing. And I would suggest that we give the board some time for input. This is a draft. We have plenty of time to move it to the next workshop so we can get, 1, the challenge form presented to us. 2, what is the form going to look like in Destiny for parents? 3, what about the form for appeals? What form are we using at the district committee level? How are we training everyone on the community standards, which is the board community standards presented in the form of a rubric? I did drop the ball a bit on adding more things to the rubric. I've had a lot going on, including the passing of my mother-in-law. But I assure you, when I get back from that funeral, I'm going to be readily available if someone wants input. I have a lot of knowledge in this area. I can't do that on everything. But the board needs to look at our policy and do a side-by-side analysis. Is this the teeth we need to make sure our policy is locked tight? And I'm here to tell you what we've been presented. This 6 pages is kind of basic stuff that everybody has in the media library procedures, but they don't have our policy. And we have time, Mr. Brodsky, I believe, that we could put this on the next workshop and still get it advertised and voted on by July. I just think that if we're going to say Loctite, lawsuit-free, every single part of our policy needs to be spelled out clearly, and we need to know what training is occurring, how we're doing the training, what forms are we using to the training, are they being trained on how to buy books, when to get rid of books, how to appeal a challenge, when a challenge occurs, what principals need to know about this community standards. There's just a lot missing, and if you were to go through it, starting on page 2, this is just an example. It should say somewhere when you're saying each school district shall provide training to school librarians, somewhere it should say school board community standards, based on the school board community standards. In selection criteria, we shouldn't be selecting anything without community standard guidelines and rubrics. In page 3, maybe we should bold, district should err on the side of caution, because I have a book here that should have never been bought, but it's not pornography. So are we going to try to figure out as a district what err on the side of caution means? This particular book is pending an appeal. It's on the shelf. It has the A word 22 times, B word 8 times, F word 30 times, S word 42 times. The description says contains sexual activities, including sexual assault, sexual nudity, alternative sexualities, profanity, drug, alcohol abuse, altered gender ideologies, references to self-harm, controversial racial and social commentary, and racial and homophobic references. This does not break Statute 847. We need guidelines on how we're going to address these books that have been appealed and are sitting on our shelf. So I am appealing to this board to see if we could put some time in and make sure that the procedures manual supports becomes the teeth of our policy. And that's all I have on that.
So if I could provide some additional context, remember the difference between a procedure and a policy. The policy itself would be the rule that the board wants us to follow. They're the governance by statute of the board. The procedure, the governance of the superintendent and staff. And when it comes to detail in that, you know, what is the form going to look like? How exactly is that going to be written when you go to parent view, you go to click on it, what's the exact wording that's on there that a parent sees? Really, the board is not, it's not the responsibility of the board. It's plain and simple, and I think Mr. Block would certainly agree.
Community standards are our responsibility. We've written them, they're not presented in the document.
Right, and the community standards are clearly written within the policy. What those community standards are, they're listed there. The rubric itself, admittedly, is one of the areas that's not in there, and I think that staff tried several times.
And the policy references see the manual.
To meet on that.
It does.
Yeah, I think it's 7 times that they attempted to meet related to communities, the community standards and the rubric.
I just think
we could certainly do the work
these
on the
are
rubric.
things like, but Mr. Brodsky, I'm sorry. Selection criteria, weeding, de-weeding, plagiarism,
They're all required.
weeding overview, collection access for students. There's really no information in here about the real issue that we've been having in our libraries. And our policy does state see the policy manual for the community standards rubric, and I don't see it. So,
Like I said, it's attempted to be 7 times related to the rubric, and so maybe the rubric needs to be added for that. We could certainly do that. The detail, though, I wanted to have a general discussion about detail. Nowhere within board policy or anywhere in any document does it explain the exact procedure for a student to leave the class.
no, I understand, but it should have
Hold on a
some,
second now.
some.
Please.
Let me kind of just make one simple point, because it's a greater context that I'd like to bring forward to the board here, more so than just this manual. Nowhere within any document does it explain how to leave a classroom and use the restroom. Nowhere does it say, here's the procedure for leaving the classroom and using the restroom. But yet we all know that students leave the classroom and use the restroom, right? So there is a level of detail when it comes to a policy versus a procedure that's there. So I kind of throw that out to the board as to roles and responsibilities where you are. This meets the statutory requirements. Yes, the exact wording on the parent portal needs to be worked on. We don't have that exact wording for the parent portal to read when they get to the portal. That done. We are working on that, and once that happens, we'll let you know what that is. Sometimes it's impossible to have that level of specificity when it comes to the implementation piece of the policy. So I was just bringing forward the rules that are statutorily required. Yes, we will need to work on the actual form itself. I can certainly bring those to the board and show you those things when they are developed over time. That's
So
not the purpose of
it is a bit confusing to me because many times we've brought policy forward where we are told that we shouldn't have the details in it, the procedures for the district. This time, we almost have no procedures at all. So are we saying that we shouldn't approve the policy and we need to add more specifics to the policy? Or are we saying that having lack of procedures that address policy concerns, should those be in the policy? I'm having, I guess, a little problem because we've been told a lot of times that policies are not for procedures, and now we're saying procedures aren't really for anything, they're just for us, but we're gonna do this rubric, which I don't have.
So there are details related to how that would look that are still being developed, that wouldn't necessarily go in this procedure manual. What this procedure manual does is provide us in compliance with the statute, the statutory requirements for that, which are not part of your policy. The policy itself is the general guideline, which is the purview of the board. The procedures by which that's done are the purview of the superintendent. And so this puts us in compliance, which is the reason why it's brought forward to you.
Ms. Gibbons?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Blocker.
Yes, sir.
I've done many trainings outside of FSBA and talked to many school boards across the state of Florida. And I guess my question to you is legally, from a legal standpoint, if the board goes into a direction and wants a specific thing done, and in that policy, we give the direction to the district or the superintendent, and it's not the purpose of what we have voted on or wanted is not upheld in such procedures. I know across the state of Florida, they have actually added the procedures to the policy. Or maybe they didn't call it procedures, but they were more, maybe the policy was more pinpointed, like Ms. Hansen was saying, to make sure that the guidelines are clear cut, whether it be this policy or another policy. I guess the legal grounds is I understand that it is the superintendent's responsibility to do procedures. However, if the direction of the board is completely different than the procedures he wants to uphold, how do we as a board, do we try to accomplish the direction that we want? Do we add it to our policy? Do we make sure that we come together and there is a way to collaboratively communicate for that reason? Because I know across the state of Florida, when we are presented a policy like this, or information like this for a policy, there are board members who do not and would not vote on this without every piece of paper in front of them. And I say all of that with respect. I'm just saying that we have to get better at communicating, whether it's this policy, next policy, a year from now, whatever it is. If you have 5 forms that go with your procedures and we're supposed to approve this, I want to see all 5 forms, because if the verbiage is not what we as a board in the direction that we want to go is correct, we have to come to some kind of communication or agreement instead of being 2 years down the road, having the same issue, not having a Loctite policy or procedures, and you have a district and parents in an uproar. And then we go for 5 more months, 6 more months, another year, and we can never get past this.
Is there a policy in which the procedure is not being followed now?
I just want to add real quick to that, Ms. Skipper.
I
I want to add on.
could name a few.
But my point is I just want to know legally, I guess, whether it's this policy, the next policy, whatever, how do we go in that direction?
Can I just add on, then answer that real quick? I just want to say, a lot of districts don't have any of these concerns. Why? Board members are sitting on policy committees. Board members are listening to meetings and making sure that the direction of the board is being heard in a policy committee. Board members are asked for feedback prior to drafting a policy manual that they're voting on. So in fact, Mr. Blocker, I would like to know the answer to Ms. Skipper's question.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Through the chair, I can respond. So the way the Florida statute's written is you have different roles and responsibilities. Y'all know that, we've talked about it many times. So y'all, as the elected school board, develop policy. The procedures should reflect and be in concert with those policies. So the goal would be that the district would write procedures that are in compliance with the policy. To your specific question, policies can be written different ways. We've all probably looked at different policies and procedures. Sometimes those are kind of melded together. I always try to think about it as, it's kind of like a commander's intent, right? If there's an intent, an op order, hey, go take that hill, but the boots on the ground carry out that operation. So y'all as a board have developed a policy, a great policy I might add, that y'all put a lot of work into with staff, and that policy is the mantle going forward. So the task in front of for the superintendent and his role now, because now the ball's been passed to him, is to develop procedures that are in compliance with that policy. So what it sounds like is Ms. Hanson's pointing out some things that she would like to see in the procedures. It sounds like Mr. Borowski had pointed out that that's something that we can work towards, so he in his role wants to work with the board. So my recommendation would be, let's work in concert to put that together, and understand, Mrs. Hanson, you've been through a lot. You lost your father, your mother-in-law recently, so you've had a lot going on, and I know you've been very involved. And then, so condolences to that, but we do want to make sure that policy and those procedures are married together as much as possible. So I think
I would also add to the board, if that's a concern of the board, remember that part of the Neola process is that there's a policy, and then there's also procedures. So you would see more of that straight line, the way you would like to see that, and the way you're articulating through that process. But Mr. Blocker, who references the boots on the ground, one of the challenges with a policy is how to implement that, right? And so if a person that is the commander has no input from the people that are the boots on the ground, the chances are that whatever that is may not work or be implemented effectively, which is why statute puts it that way, so that the people that actually do the work and know the work and know that the challenges and the barriers, as well as the threshold for each part of the policy, how that should be implemented, which is why the legislature wisely separated those two roles. Now, when you see Neola, you would see they have a policy and a written procedure piece of that, and you would see more of a linear between the two. It's my role to enforce the policy. It's always my intent to enforce the policy the way it's written by the board, and I will continue to do that and collaborate with the board.
I mean, I'm certainly not asking to write the procedures. What I'm saying is, there are some key components missing that support the policy.
Yep.
And that's a fact. I mean, they're just not in here, so.
May I ask a question, Mr. Walker? Did you have a chance to review this procedure?
I have not, no ma'am, but I will take a look at it.
Thank you.
And again, the procedures being compliant with statute, it wouldn't show every form used in the process to make it implemented, just like there's no form or written procedure for how it gets used the rest of each and every day.
And I think, if I could just say to the board, I think y'all have written a great policy that has addressed, community standards, and I think y'all recognize as a board some gaps, and y'all have come together with staff and put that together. So I think now what we need to do is work with the superintendent and his staff to make sure that those procedures, reflect the policy. But I think it's clear, I think Mr. Brosky said this, his mandate is to carry out the wishes of the board. So if y'all move forward with adopting this policy, that's the law as far as, the school district. So the pressure is on the superintendent, not to put it too delicately, but the pressure is on him to make sure that those policies are carried out. So generally the procedure manual is his way of directing his staff, like, hey, this is what the board wants, this is the policy, this is how we're going to carry it out. Mr. Brosky and I did speak briefly this morning. I think he understands, and he said here today, there's some opportunities to work on this, and I would encourage us to collaborate, collectively. I think that's.
And I have to say, I guess I don't know. We kind of got into this whole mess, not because of our policy. It was lack of procedures, no procedures, lack of follow-through of procedures, buying books, not following procedure, getting rid of our checks and balances. All of those things are not part of policy. So my real problem is we got into this mess because our procedures were not what they were supposed to be. And so if we do not work together, as we get Neola and we start trouncing through these policies, it's going to be a really, really big deal, because you can't ask me to trust 100% when we're just recovering from a procedural error and lack of oversight problem. And I guess that's where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to tell them what procedures are right, but I'm telling you this is very, very vague and maybe doesn't support the policy. And I promise that's the last thing I'm going to say, but that's part of my heart. Even as a mom, if something went wrong with my kids, I would evaluate it. If it was a parental problem, my husband and I would work on it. So we have a problem that was created for us. We fixed it in policy. It doesn't mean that we don't have a right to ask questions and try to figure out procedures that will better support the policy.
So maybe what we could ask is, Mr. Brosky, what is your plan for
So what we
properly
would do
training
in this
staff?
particular situation, because of the interest in this one particular topic, remember, we're literally doing hundreds of things each and every day, right? There's only a couple that rise to the board's level of interest that we're talking about at a workshop, and this is one of them. So what we would do is, we can certainly in another workshop show the forms and the things that you would like to see related to that, realizing the board would realize that the people who develop those forms and those procedures in place are doing them because they're the boots on the ground that know the work and know that. So coming into it and saying, hey, I don't like the wording on this one obscure form used in the process is not the role of the board. Let me just be clear on that.
Well, yeah, that's different than asking to see a form.
Right.
I'm not arguing about words. And my husband was a commander. He does know what's going on the ground.
So I'm just merely pointing out, using the example the board attorney gave, that it would always be better to get the information from the people that actually do the work and not just listen to people who don't know the work. who call you or do other things with you. It'd be great to know the work first prior to making those decisions. But the way we can do that on these types of topics that we have an interest would be to bring that forward and show you all of the forums and all of those things as we move forward. My role is to enforce the policy that's developed, regardless of whatever the policy is. I'll continue to do that.
Well, and I think it's also, it's good to have it in writing, and we do in our policy, and I hear what you're saying about the procedure manual, but I think where the rubber meets the road is the implementation of it, and that's not necessarily linked to what's written. It's more about training, right? Like, how are we training our library and media center specialists to do this that we've asked them to do in accordance with our policy? And I would assume that that's happening during professional development, that that's happening when you're onboarding, and I know that there's all of this new training that they're required to do. We've had the slideshows sent to us that the state requires them to look through, so.
And certainly the board's free to say, hey, I'm concerned about this. Can you make sure this is being done, or that's being done, or hey, I'd like to see more of this or this beefed up? Certainly the board can give those suggestions, and I would encourage that. And at the same time, the board needs to realize that that responsibility fits within the superintendent and the people that actually do the work on the ground each and every day should be trusted.
Ms. Gibbard?
I just want to say, I don't think anybody's saying that we don't want their input or that it's not like how that should be. That's not what we're saying. I think that what I know I am saying is that we want to make sure that we express what we as a board want to be implemented, and that we see the work that you do as far as procedures, so that we are aware and essentially understand that, yeah, you are following our policy. Because I will tell you this, I don't know what others say, I don't know what other people do, but I can tell you I've met with board members across the whole United States, and I've said this since the very beginning. If I don't know how things work, I called it a black hole because it's so big, this operation, whether it's HR, whether it's operations, whether it's academics, understanding how everything operates and how everything works, and then seeing it implemented is actually what makes me as a board member a better policy maker. So understanding the day-to-day operations and being involved in the schools and being involved in visits and hearing from our teachers and seeing how this is implemented and talking to staff is actually more beneficial. And I don't know, I guess I understand your viewpoint, but I also need, as I'm speaking for myself, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I want you to understand that I have to know the everyday operations, being boots on the ground as well, to be a better policy maker and understanding my role and my job.
Absolutely, I agree. We're saying the same thing, and I agree with you 100%. I'm suggesting that the way you do that is for topics like this, that more detail is needed. Okay, we can certainly bring that forward and show you that detail that you want. Okay, realize it's difficult because things are happening each and every day. This one rises to the level in which you want that. We can certainly present that, give you all the information you want to help you make a better be a better policy maker. But I agree with you 100%. Okay, the way we would do that is bring that information forward to you. The purpose of this one item is to keep us within statutory compliance of the law and kind of outline some of those things. Every single detail about how it would be implemented is not in that manual. Ms. Hanson is correct in what she said.
Well, I don't want every single detail, but the things I mentioned today were discussed with your staff, with me sitting in a room with them.
Right.
And I don't see any of that. That's all I'm saying. So.
Yes, Mr. Bacher?
Yeah, just if I could just two things, I won't belabor the point, but I think, one of the challenges y'all have is the sunshine law. So this is y'all's only opportunity, really, in workshops to come together and have these conversations. So that's important. This is a great conversation for y'all to come, because you can't pick up the phone and call each other and talk. So this is y'all's opportunity with the superintendent. So this is a healthy discussion to have, within the parameters of the law to really kind of hash this out. That's important. I also want to recognize that, I know each of y'all in your own way, through your own style, has been reaching out to media specialists in the community, having community meetings, office hours. These are important steps so that you're listening to the public and also understanding the staff as well, and also communicating with the superintendent as well, because it takes all of y'all working in concert this. But to be clear, y'all have come up with a great policy. The policy is, I think, one of the better ones in the state of Florida. I think that's really a credit to each of y'all. And I understand the concern now is, how do we see that play out and make sure that's being followed correctly? So I promise you, we will all work collectively together, and the superintendent and I will work, to make sure that y'all's wishes as the policymakers are carried out. And I know, your staff is eager, to see that as well. So, Mr. Barnes, just to kind of tie this together, I think you had mentioned there was an effort to do some follow-up with some members of the board and some of the staff. Can we revisit that, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so make sure, because I understand.
I think what I would say is that, if you want to look at the forms and down to the detail that you're talking about, we can certainly present all of that to you and what it looks like on I almost said focus, synergy, and all of those things. We can show you any of those things you want, and always open to any dialogue. And if you feel like something needs to be beefed up and say, hey, I saw this, I'm not happy with this, it's always your prerogative. And many of you do call me to tell me you want something done in one particular area or another. And then it's my job to implement the policy that's written. It's always my intent to implement it to the very best of my ability and staff, keeping in mind the barriers and the capacity of the staff involved, right? That's a thing, like on implementing something.
So,
Right.
so just, is that something that the board would like to see going forward, have a more in-depth?
I think what has to happen is the board has identified this particular topic as one that they want more in-depth information. We'll provide more in-depth information to the board. Other topics are topics that we do each and every day, many topics every day. We'll continue to do those things to make the district run. As the attorney says, a high-functioning district. Right? If there's areas you want more information, I'll provide more information to you. Just need to know where that area is. So today I hear this is an area you want more information is what I got.
We did purchase Neola. We are going to be going through every single one of our old policies.
Right.
Without board input, I foresee Ms. Hanson having something to say about all of it, because our input is important. Not the district does everything on their own and then gives it to me to look at on a Thursday. That's not board input. That's not making us feel better about the procedures you'll put in place to protect the policy. Really, it's just lack of communication. Before you present stuff, I don't think I've ever been asked for my input. So as we move forward, this conversation with me is going to come up every time we get a new policy and we're looking at it through Neola. I'm going to ask that the board be allowed to read the different forms of the policy, the board be allowed to have input on that policy, the district works with our input, because that's actually the way it works. I'm not sure everybody knows that. But we give the input and the direction, the district makes it happen with your advice on what really maybe wouldn't work, what will work. But it is the board's input that directs policy. We were elected to this board with our own cultures that we bring from our own district for that purpose. And so maybe today, yes, this is a high topic, but moving forward, you're going to hear it from me every single time we come to a policy if board input is not allowed before you present the policy to me. And the rest of the board would have to make that decision. But I do need to have some input on policy, so.
Yeah, there's no doubt that statutorily policies are purview of the board. Nobody's doubting that at all. And so the level of input in the Neola process, we're starting that process now.
Mm-hmm.
And so many districts have gone through that process. I think 40 some odd districts are in that process. So they have expertise in this area and can certainly help and drive the process forward.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Any other? Man, that was good. That was a good discussion. I feel better. You guys feel better? Ah, good. Let's move on to the next one. Proclamation of Mental Health Month. This is Mental Health Month. I just want to kind of highlight the good work that's being done by our social workers, our mental health folks, even our guidance counselors. How about this? 1,162 referrals for mental health help. Our Project Brave out of Flagler Health, 86% connection rate, which if you know anything about the mental health industry, 86% is super duper high in connection to services. Very proud of that for our students and our families. There's a lack of mental health clinicians. I don't know if you, just like teachers, just like everything else, there's a lack of them. And so one of the challenges is when a family or a student has challenges that they need to meet, and they don't have the ability to find a provider. What Project Brave does is it helps to link those two together because they have expertise in that area. So very proud of that, proud of the work that our mental health clinicians have, our relationships with Clay Behavioral, Children's Home Society, the Youth Crisis Center. There's a whole group of other people that aren't visible that do great work for kids, and this is celebrating those individuals and what they accomplish. So Mental Health Month. Next is the code of conduct. The Code of Conduct comes before the board each and every year. There's a committee of just shy of 30 people. They meet periodically, which includes parents on the committee, as well as district staff, principals, all of the people involved that know the work. They look through the entire Code of Conduct. As a goal, we want an approved Code of Conduct prior to August. So beginning with the end in mind, we're bringing the advertising to the public to you now, because it would be voted on at the end of June meeting, because there is no July meeting. So let's talk time processes first.
Mr. Brodsky, we would actually, if you wanted to, there is sufficient time between the May 2nd and the June 6th meeting.
Okay.
So we can approve, do the public hearing at the June 6th meeting if you...
The 28 days, there's 28 days.
There are.
Okay. So we could bring it at the beginning of June. The concern would be there's no July meeting, and then August comes around quickly. So typically, there's only a couple of areas that people have extreme concern about. And I would bet that we're about to have a discussion about dress code cell phones.
Well, there's 3 areas. I called you, to be honest, I told you ahead of time that there was a couple of areas that I'm not concerned with most of the student code of conduct or the parent handbook. A couple of areas, one area is this section on bullying. I know in past meetings, anybody in this room can research the bullying issue in American public schools. It's an issue that creates a lot of mental health stress. If you go to a school and you ask kids, have you ever been bullied? I will guarantee you most of them will say yes. We've seen kids in expulsion hearings that defend themselves because they were bullied. I hear teachers tell me on a daily basis, not just the 2 that you guys think I talk to, but when you go out and you have office hours and you visit schools, teachers tell me daily there's a bullying problem at school. Students will tell you exactly how they bully you. What we have here, this is my concern, probably can't be solved right now, Mr. Brodsky, but I honestly think we need to form some kind of task force, because we do have a bullying problem in Clay County, and I'm not saying that we don't do anything about it. So for instance, when you're looking at bullying in here, this tells me very little as a student, tells me very little as a parent.
What page are you on?
Yeah, it's on page 14, and I'm not sure on when you pull it down, because there's some introductory pages, if it's actually 14 on the document, but it's page 14 once you get through the table of contents. So when you read this means, this wording and the way it's written isn't helping any student. It's just not. Or helping a parent understand. So for instance, we could add a little bit of an education piece, a preventative piece. I mean, the kids, if this is trying to help kids understand what they can do when they're bullied. We need to help them understand. It's 3 little paragraphs. It's somewhat confusing at times about how you have to have substantiating bullying categories. The words are not student-friendly. I know we have time before the workshop when you advertise this, but honestly, when you have as much about or more about sexual harassment and a whole page about discrimination, and you got this little teeny bit here, which is one of the major issues in schools today, to include cyberbullying, I'm just asking that we take a look at this. Maybe I didn't know about this bullying hotline. I probably heard about it when I was teaching. There's no kid that even knows about that. We should have signs everywhere about that. So not that the signs would be part of this, Mr. Broski, but I think we need to do a better job because we know it's one of the major factors deterring from academics in schools today, whether it be in person, online, cyberbullying, through cell phones. So this piece right here connects directly to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is cell phones.
So if we could, what I heard you say, just to kind of recap, is more education on bullying for students and procedures for that brought out.
I mean, if I was a kid reading this, I'm almost scared of it because it's like we need to have these 3 parties, and it's.
Right. Well, I think there's some confusion as to what the statutory definition of bullying is, and so
It's not confusion. Student code of conduct should be student friendly. I mean, honestly, in some ways. Now, I know Neola will have a whole section for student policies. That's what it does. It's section 5,000. I handed it out at a school board meeting a couple months ago. And I asked Mr. Broski yesterday, as we go through Neola and we separate out all these student policies, he explained to me how that affects the student code of conduct and what can be done as we move forward, because it would be like almost it's a year-long process, right? But meanwhile, this bullying piece has a direct connection to our cell phone piece.
What I was trying to point out to you is that when I heard you say we need to do more information campaign for students and more at the school level related to bullying, I agree with you. Bullying is a thing, was a thing, and
Always has.
always a challenge. So I just wanted to validate. I heard what you're telling me for bullying before we went out to the second one.
Because Ms. Skipper and I actually wanted to hold a bullying forum, because if you do that, parents have real stories, not little stories, but really horrific stories.
No doubt.
And a lot of the biggest problem with bullying, unless someone tells you, it's more rampant than you know. It's like rape. Unless they tell someone, it's more rampant than the police know. They say only 1 out of 4 women report. Bullying is the same way. And so I appreciate you thinking about what I'm saying about that piece.
And then,
Can I ask you a
Sure.
question? Who answers the bullying hotline?
we have staff that go back and hear it.
Does it go to HR?
My secretary.
You?
My secretary.
Okay, so your department, that's what I wanted to know. Who in this district takes these calls?
So right now, there's a link on the website that will take you directly to a form that the parents can fill out, and that link goes to myself, Ms. Jones, and Ms. Paget. What we do then is we collect that information and get that back out to the schools. So that way the schools can conduct an investigation.
So what if the child's too scared to tell their parents?
That's hard for us to read minds on something like that.
That's the
students-
education piece.
Anyone
That's what
can
I'm saying, do
submit
they
those
know that they
forms.
can call the bullying
No,
hotline?
not most of them.
I mean, I'm not encouraging
Right.
kids not to tell their parents by any means, that's not what I'm
Right.
saying. I'm just saying that sometimes things happen and they might be embarrassed, or they're scared that they're gonna get called out, and then when they get to school, they're gonna be bullied even further and stuff like that. So if this hotline, if they knew about this supposed hotline,
We'll be encouraged to tell another adult.
right, I mean, 100%, but I'm just saying that.
But the
And
school,
the hotline and the form are available to anyone. As soon as someone clicks on the link, it opens it up. So it's not a situation where it will block anyone from being able to do it. And what Ms. Paget does is for the students that may not have access to a computer, or a parent that may not have access to a computer, what she'll do is she'll collect their information and put it into our form so that we're keeping track of the reports that we get so that it can go out to the schools.
Once we send it out to the schools, then the schools will go ahead and investigate the situation, and they'll report back to us what their findings were.
And the biggest problem at the school level, honestly, they're gonna call everybody in. Everybody around the school already knows what you did. People are afraid. Matter of fact, I have a lovely granddaughter, highly gifted, unique, creative. And I was talking about this with my husband, because you see bullying stuff on the news, and you just hear about it from people. They talk about it with other kids. And she perked up and said, I was bullied terribly. She never told us. We were teachers at her school. We have a real problem. And even when you have a hotline, what's the first thing we do? We call everybody in, right? So everybody in the whole school knows it was you. I mean, it's a tough situation. I think we need to do some research and really think about it. Because if you're talking about having a positive influence on academics, eliminating this would be key. Yeah.
Mr. Stafey, how many bullying incidents do you get reported? Do you have any statistics? And I'm saying generic, I don't need
I can pull that
specific
information up for
numbers.
you, but I want to say that we're somewhere around 60 or 70, maybe 80 for the year.
Okay.
That's about typical what we would get by this time of the year.
So
in
the
last
key
year.
though is to have the children report it.
Well,
And that the children, if they're being bullied, a lot of children, like your granddaughter, my daughter, 5th grade, huge problem, will choose not to share it.
Right.
And that will eventually come out in other forms that you deal with. But that the sharing is the hardest part.
yeah.
And to Ms. Hanson's point about getting called in, there's a number of different ways, as an assistant, that I worked as an assistant principal, that we would, through education, this could also be ways to teach the kids of how to report.
Yeah.
If there are situations that come up, if the parent or the child does not want to get called in and have everybody else called in about that, let us know that, and we'll make sure that that becomes part of that process. If they just want to make us aware that something is going on, they can let us know that, hey, keep an eye on it. We can inform teachers, whatnot. The other part is the reporting portion of it. We've done things, I was at Ridgeview High School. Something as simple as we had a yellow basket that was in the student services office, which is where attendance notes went. Everybody misses at some point in time or another. If they come in with a note and wanted to put a bullying notification in there, they would put that on there. Our secretary would then contact one of the administrators to go ahead and investigate it. So that way it wasn't something where they were being called out or going in and telling. The other part is if I was going to speak to a student, I might have them called to the nurse or to the guidance counselor to go speak to them there, as opposed to getting called up to the admin office. So that way, if there was something going on, it doesn't look like they're, the term everybody's
singled
snitching
out.
or whatever.
Well,
you
that
wanna-
witness is not at every school.
Right.
It is at a lot of them though.
Well,
And in the
but
elementary
again, if
schools,
that's
there's
something that we
similar
want to do through the
baskets.
education that you were speaking of, that's something that we can have put in place,
Well, I
we can
just
work on
know
that.
it's not just us in Clay County. I know it's important. It's happening more often than we think. It's the root cause of a lot of misbehaviors and absences and truancy. There is a lot going on and a lot of mental health issues with our kids. And if we don't do a better job, I mean, it's been around since I was a kid, right? It's worse now because of cell phones. So we need to do a better job, and I appreciate you guys
Yeah, we
listening
certainly-
about that.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. And look for strategies to improve that. The second one, Ms. Hanson?
Truancy. Truancy.
Is that
It's
your
page 17. So a lot of counties across the country, and you can research, it's one of my things, it's what I like to do, have gone to universal policies for certain things. One of them is truancies. Districts have to mean it for it to have any weight. Our truancy policies do not have any weight. We used to have more weight. We used to have truancy courts. We do things where teachers report truancy at so many. I know I read in here, there are some things that we do with truancy. kids can't learn unless they're at school. I know of kids who have missed 85 days of school for 5 years and get passed on every single year. They get into 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. It is out there. There's probably thousands of kids, I am not kidding you, thousands of kids who are truant according to state law. And I believe we do have the law in here, right, but what I'm asking is, we need to mean business. When people know we mean business, parents take it more, they're just gonna take it more seriously. Oh my gosh, you've had 5 unexcused absences, get yourself to school right now. At McCray Elementary, they had a very aggressive year when I was working there to get students to school. And during that aggressive year, we were up to 93% attendance. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time. We need to do better. Kids can't learn when they're out of school. And if we ran official reports for this year, I did talk to probably 30 different teachers. All I gotta do is call them, and I ask. All of them have kids. 5, 10 unexcused absences, 80 unexcused absences, 40 unexcused absences. Kids can't learn. And universal policies that go across the county for something like truancy is a consistency and a policy that we could, as a board, as a district, as principals, say, this is at every school, your kid needs to be here. And until we get serious about it, and I'm not sure if we can run reports, I mean, I am pretty sure that I probably would bet money that I'm right about us having a truancy problem, and there's a lot of kids that would come up on a list if we ran it according to state statute. So, I don't know what we need to do. I don't know if we need to change some language in here so that everybody takes it seriously. But this is, just your basic within 3 school days. If it's unexcused and you've got 25 of them, are we really getting a note? I know that we didn't get notes. Kid was on cruises for 7 days. Nobody got a note when I was working. I think we do need to look at this because the law is in here. And as a district, maybe as a board, try to decide what we can do about it. It has, like I said, more teeth than what we currently have. And maybe you know more of that.
With the most recent, just a comment, since COVID, you're absolutely right. Absences have been huge.
It's huge.
And absences have been a major problem. But the district has also done a huge,
Several things.
recently, you're going to still see some absences,
Last year in particular,
but
we saw a huge increase in student attendance.
Yeah.
That's not gonna stop the, I'm gonna call it the, oh my goodness, folks, the 80, the people here who are working currently on bringing truancy court back that seem to have ended 6, 7, 8 years ago for whatever reason.
I think my understanding was it was voluntary, right? Truancy court was voluntary, and it was voluntary for the judge. Like you were dependent upon a judge being willing to set their time aside to do it because it wasn't required.
But everybody knew about it. Everybody was afraid of it.
well, sort of afraid of it, but because there were a lot of families that don't show up.
Correct.
Similar to our student hearings. Families don't show up sometimes.
Right.
Because
But
they don't care,
you know? For the most part, you know what I mean? Like we can't.
But if their child's going to be absent all the time,
Yeah.
they're using that child for a variety of reasons. And I'm saying that from family use. I need my fifth grader to stay home today because my kid's sick and I have to go to work. And 5th grader is at home taking care of the child then. I mean, there are so many situations like that.
How about this, how about we get some data for you to present in a future.
And also tell you, it's connected to grades, right? How can a kid miss 60 days of school and still pass? I mean, honestly, I know it. Don't tell me in my 20 years that I don't know this. I know this, all right? 45 days, 30 days. The other part of the piece is actually trying to hold people accountable. Like if a kid's literally out of, teachers as well, if a kid's literally out of 60 days, how is he passing? Because he wouldn't pass my class, I can tell you that. And so there is a lot going on here below the surface, I think. I don't know.
No doubt attendance and truancy is an area worth exploring, so I wrote that down.
Okay.
But I saw Miss Fogarty get up.
I saw her coming, I'm coming, but she knows I'm not wrong.
I was like, okay, she's ready to jump on this. All right, go ahead, Laura.
So one thing that you may not be aware of is the process that happens, right? So once a kid hits the 3 days, our
in here,
teachers
right?
start calling.
Yeah.
And so we've got a whole attendance to decision tree where they meet at the school, they have a student's attendance meeting, and then once they get, when they have a very high number, then they come to the district office and we have a meeting. Because the first thing we want to do, are there any barriers that we need to remove? Because we know that to teach a child, we have to get them there. So we have had the privilege of meeting with Mr. Steinmetz on several occasions, and so we are moving forward with that process. One of the things that we're going to look at doing is, we've already run a list of like who has been absent and who has the most days. So I want to be proactive during the summer and send a letter that says, you know, dear Ms. Smith, we realize that Sally was absent and we know that in the forthcoming year, they will be here every day. Here's a calendar. Here's when they're expected to be. Yes, we want them 5 days a week, every single day. But one of the things in working with Mr. Steinmetz is whenever you do go to court, we have to be able to provide things like counseling, like parenting classes, and things that will make a difference in that child's life, because that's what we're all here for, right? Is to get those children there so that then we can teach them to help them.
Ms. Fogarty, are you saying, because I'm gonna be amazed.
Are you okay?
Yeah,
I'm gonna be amazed.
I was just shocked that we have to give parenting classes, I just did.
No, I wasn't saying that we
No,
wanted to
no,
give
no.
parenting classes, I'm saying that we would offer a variety and a menu of choices that would be upheld through the courts. So Mr. Blocker and his firm are working, and like Ms. Gilhousen said, we have to get a judge on board.
Madam Chair, can I just bring, I appreciate, thank you for bringing this up. So there's a lot, so I've worked in truancy quite a bit, so we have to meet with the chief judge here, which I'll be sitting down with him, Mr. Steinmetz and I will, with the chief judge and the Fourth Circuit, just trying to make sure that we, identify, get the court system on board. Like Ms. Fogarty said, we have to have, so when the judge has a truancy case come in front of them, they have to be able to assign punishment, right? Punishment or corrective action or rehabilitation. So it's incumbent on us to work with local stakeholders to develop what those programs are. So the sheriff's department and some other different, so we can say, okay, here's a parenting class that the parents can go to and learn, to make sure that, get their kids to school on time, or the life skills class. So this is a bigger haul, I think. There are about 2,000 students that we've identified potentially as your face just turned white, but
Mine?
so
Oh, no, I'm on it. I'm the one running the
you're right. All right, Kim, so that's
I'm on it.
right. So that's a lot. And you have to prepare these cases. So this is a major haul. Your staff is working hard on this. A lot of this we've been kind of working on the back because we didn't want to bring this yell till we're ready to kind of roll it out. But I appreciate Mrs. Hanson bringing this up so we can. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question, is there still a law in the books that a parent can be arrested if their child is truant?
Well, there is, and I've prosecuted some of those, but it's, it's so rarely because then there are other considerations if you put the parent, hold them in contempt.
Well, hello, your child's not gonna get to school then.
Yes, ma'am, and it's called a detainer, so,
Okay.
if the parent's detained, they have other children, so they've kind of moved away from that to a certain extent, but generally these are life skill issues where people are having young parents or not so young parents are having a hard time balancing out those kind of life skills. You have the whole Alice parent scenario.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
at what point does DCF get involved? Because is it ever considered neglect if I know like if you don't get appropriate health care, or those things qualify as neglect of care for that child? Is the same true for education?
It potentially could be. Generally, just truancy alone does not trigger that, but DCF could be involved if there are other issues going on as well. If there's neglect or child abuse or something like that, that it's kind of generally these things unfortunately go in groupings.
So truancy doesn't
Necessarily trigger DCF. It could. There could be scenarios where that does. That
This
starts.
is extreme truancy?
It could. Generally, DCF is the health of the child, so the educational parameters are viewed, so you want to look at domestic violence,
Right.
some type of, unfortunately, our society today, we deal with, familiar relationships are inappropriate, so generally that's when, or there's abuse, child abuse, that's generally when DCF is required to get involved, they're mandatory reporting. For truancy, sometimes the parents are not aware, they think their kids are getting on the school bus and they're disappearing, so sometimes it's an awareness issue. So there are actually processes like Ms. Farley talked, where you have to, it starts at the school level, they have to notify, kind of then bring it to but when it comes to the district level, it's a problem that the school is not able to address. So the lowest possible level, they're no longer able to handle, and so now it is a district problem, which makes it a school board problem. So that's why we have to have kind of build this process. So it's going to take, we'll report back to the board, from time to time, and hopefully, but the goal is, I think the superintendent gave us direction, he would like to have it up and running by the fall. A little ambitious, but we'll get there, we are relying on outside external agencies and forces to work with us in collaboration, so.
I just wonder if DCF might be one of those agencies because the nature of the population of students where I work.
Of course.
A lot of times you see foster care, placement,
Absolutely.
in relation to, they come to school with all kinds of.
Yes, ma'am, I think it's a great point. And DCF does have some resources and as far as like training parents, because sometimes, you could have a, a discipline, you have young parents that just are not aware how to discipline their kids. You don't have to, discipline the same way. There are different ways, life skills. And so, but I think that's a great point. That's something we can look into. Sometimes that does go together in a grouping, generally truancy is
DCF, I think truancy is usually
sure.
a part of all of that.
Absolutely. Well, truancy could also be a symptom of bullying or other things where kids don't want to go to school because there's something there, there's something horrible going on. So it is all intertwined. And generally, when you're in front of a judge, that's an intimidating process. So it's designed to be because you want to get, if you have rebellious children, you want to get their attention when you're sitting in front of a judge and saying, hey, this is, because the kids can't always separate what that means, so. But we'll keep working on that, so.
Ms. Fugger, did you say every 3 unexcused absence we're holding attendance meetings? So at a high school of 2,000 people, every time the kid is 5 unexcused?
No, ma'am, it's a phone call from.
Well, I mean, for every one of them?
From the teacher.
At every school, that's what we're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Every 3 unexcused
That's
absences.
what is in there.
Isn't there like a law that like if your child misses, you have to notify anyway? Under the one,
If you want that to be an excused absence, you have to provide documentation as to why it's excused, a note part of it.
I know, but like notifying them. We do automated.
The parent, yes, you are correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, you are correct. So we do, through Synergy, there's an automated phone call that goes out. You're right, yes, ma'am.
6 p.m.
Yep.
Okay, so I heard 2 things, bullying, want to address bullying more, and I heard truancy, we want to address truancy and student attendance.
And then cell phones is my
Cell
last
phones.
one.
Cell phones, okay.
What's my last one?
All right, let's do it.
So this went on last year. I'm doing so much talking, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that really, I don't know, I'm feeling kind of bad, but, so last year I remember appealing to the board about being brave because of mental health issues, abuse of cell phones. We could be the first in the state to be brave, the first in the state to eliminate cyberbullying through cell phones, distractions through cell phones, mental health problems because of cell phones, addiction problems because of cell phones. And I remember fighting adamantly about this cell phone policy. Well, between now and then, there are about 20 counties in the state of Florida. Now, I know Duval joined on last week, Brevard, Duval, but they have changed their policies. Many of them are following, I believe the state guidance is off and away, right? So what school boards across the country are doing, and there is data, you can look it up, from the time that they make these policy changes, they have less referrals and increases in academic achievement. And that's because the kids aren't distracted. We all know that. What I'm asking is that we consider having phones often in their backpacks, like the state of Florida.
I thought
off.
that was what we agreed to last
Huh?
year. I think last year when we had this discussion, we peeled it back. We were gonna do it in stages, right? We peeled it back last year and said,
We
this
didn't
year,
actually.
well, what we said last year was, because before there was no rule about when you could use a cell phone, right?
No, there was rules.
But I mean, kids were allowed to have them in the classroom prior
Right,
to
correct.
our ruling last year.
And in their backpacks at their
Listen,
desks. or
right,
in their
There was
pockets.
rules, then we let up on the rules, and last year now they can have them in transition. Are we talking about the same thing?
Let me finish what I'm saying. So last year, when we had this discussion, what we all voted and finally decided on was that last year's student code of conduct, we would only allow cell phones in the lunchroom and during transition time, with the understanding that coming to this year's student code of conduct, the cell phone would be stored away and off bell to bell. That was what we discussed last year when we took this issue up. So
yeah.
that was my understanding of what we would be presented.
Well, I like your understanding, because what we have right now, with cell phones up and in their faces all through transition in high school. So what a lot of counties have done is often in their backpack, unless by law, teachers can direct them to use their phone, like for science experiments. I see you guys did strike out this teachers have to beg for permission to use a phone part, and I was happy about that. But the off and in a backpack is key, because they're on silent in their back pockets. And there is more of a distraction when their butt jiggles. They cannot get back on task. Kids will sit there and be freaked out about it for 5 or 10 minutes because they know they got a message or a picture or something from their friends. Transition, unneeded. I'm not gonna sit here and just be hard about this. Maybe the board thinks it's secondary. In high school, very large lunches, a lot of mass confusion. Maybe I would prefer they talk to each other at lunch, but maybe in high school, they are allowed to have them at that one instance. But I'm advocating for off and in their backpacks. And honestly, when I went to Clay High, I was really proud of their administrative team, because when we visited, I heard people I could just hear them on that first day of school, off and in your backpack. Often in your backpack. I will give kudos to Clay High, because they already knew they needed to be often in their backpack, not in their pocket, not vibrating, not out in their face during transition when you have only 4 minutes to get to your next class. But your recollection is better than mine, but I'm thinking we could uphold the state law, have them often in their backpacks. Maybe in high school they could use them in, I wish they didn't, but I'm saying that would be a good thing to maybe do if administrators think that would be the best time to allow older kids on their cell phone. Definitely not in transition, and definitely not on vibrating in their back pocket. So that's kind of where I was at with that.
I think they need to be often in the backpack bell to bell. That's my.
So just to be clear, the current policy is that a student should have the cell phone off and put away.
Or silenced.
Right, and so that, the transition, they're currently allowed to have them in transition in the hallway.
Right.
They're currently allowed to have them before and after school, right, and during lunch.
Right.
They're allowed to do that. From bell to bell, and you can see that is being enforced by SAC. How do I know that's being enforced? Because currently there's 1,900 discipline referrals for wireless communication devices. Most of it you can see is a junior high and high school data-wise. You got only 29 elementary students. And I can imagine that sometimes it becomes a defiance issue, right? When you say you're not doing what the adult's telling you to do, then that becomes defiance. Junior high is about 576, and high school is about 1,300, for a total of 1,900 roughly. Keep in mind that when we implemented that, we also looked for a way to implement it in a rational way. So on the first time, it's a warning. The second one is the second violation, you get the first referral piece of that. So some of these, all of these.
Can you
would
point
have-
to me in the policy where it says that they need to be off and in their backpacks?
The policy says should be off and
No, I
not
don't
used.
see it. That's what I'm asking.
Right. I don't know the exact.
It used to
wording
say
there.
silenced or off, and it used to,
Right, so House Bill, is it 379?
Right.
It doesn't say that it should be in a backpack. What it says is that the students may not use the wireless communication device during instructional time, and the teacher can designate where the phone
Well,
should be.
I know that part.
Okay,
Right.
so it doesn't say that it needs to
But
be
we
in a
can.
backpack. That's, that's where I think the legislature wanted to leave it
No.
at the teacher or the district's discretion to make that determination.
They also
where
said the
phone
teacher
needs
should
to
collect them all and put them behind their desk. That's in there too. We don't do that either. I am telling you, it is not illegal to have them turn their phones off and put them in a backpack.
No, one of the
Is that-
things,
yeah.
though,
He said
They
that
shouldn't
this-
have them silenced in their
You didn't
pocket.
hear what he said you could do that at a district level. It's just the legislators stopped here for us as a
Right.
board to decide that. He's not saying that. That's not what
and
he said.
as a board, but also as the leadership of the schools, because as I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brodsky, last year when this bill was passed, our assistant principals and principals in the junior high and senior high specifically spent quite a long time sitting down and saying, okay, gives us the opportunity now. We now have the opportunity to establish the rule and to have this as the meat that we need behind it. And they came up with the actual procedures within the junior highs and senior highs. And I know when we went into the schools, when I've gone into all of the schools I've gone into, there are, yeah, there it is. I was gonna say, there are posters, there are pages up saying,
I'm just
these
asking
are the
where it
rules,
says
these are the
it.
rules, these are the rules. And in the schools that I visited, when I go into a junior high or high school classroom, I specifically look for those backpacks. And in all the visits that we've done, those backpacks are over in a corner. And the arguments I remember getting from parents saying, wait a second, what happens in a situation where there's an emergency? I thought, you're sitting in the same room with your backpack. Any teacher is going to let you take your backpack to the corner, the safe corner, call your mom and dad. I would encourage us, before we make a blanket, not, bell-to-bell rule saying no cell phones whatsoever, I would
No, it's not,
encourage us
we can't
and
say that,
implore
it's
us
against
to
the law.
please talk to the administrators at the junior highs and the high schools to ask why we should do this, or why perhaps it might not be the best idea to do this. There are concerns for safety and security that I don't want to share
Well, the
here.
law says they have to have them on campus. We can't take their phones away.
Correct.
Correct.
The law says
Personal
any
property.
teacher can have them use a cell phone for educational purposes. So I'm not sure I followed your entire conversation. What I'm asking is they're not silenced in their backpack, that we make an effort to help them show responsibility, turning them off so they're not distracted by it, putting them in their backpack. Maybe we say secondary schools can have them out at lunch. That would be, administrators would have to let Mr. Brodsky know, is that a good thing, is it not a good thing, right? I can tell you they don't need it in transition, and these phones are unhealthy. I mean, they're just, and I think what Ms. Gilhausen said, I just don't see anything we said is in the policy. Do you see any part of the policy that says they're supposed to be away and off? I don't see that right now, I'm looking at it.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
can
So-
I make a statement? Go for it. Because I want to have a say in this, because I've done a ton of research on this, and I just want to voice my opinion. So, in front of you is Orange County's policy. And you can go to Google right now and find a slew of articles about this policy. This is a bell-to-bell policy. And my firm belief is, you do one, you do for all. We're universal across the board. Because let me tell you what happens. I don't know what schools you're going into. I'm going into, I feel like, the same schools. And there's a conversation that I have with people every time I leave the school, whether it's dress code or whatever. There's a lot of positives too. Let's start with that. There's a lot of positives. That's not what I'm saying. I don't just go in there and nitpick what's wrong. That's not what happens. But when I'm seeing a child texting during our national anthem, it takes all I can do to not go over there and literally smash the phone. I said it. It boils my blood. It's disrespectful. That is educational time that's happening. And you can't tell me it's not happening. You have kids listening to music with headphones on during educational time, when people who serve our country are speaking. It's disrespectful. This is a very extreme scenario, but it's something I am passionate about because my husband did serve. I have family members who served, and my ending board comments today will all relate to this, because I will tell you this: we have to start bringing certain things back into our schools and taking other things out. And this is a prime example of this. We have to have our kids with their faces to eye contact, looking at people, communicating to people, understanding how to be socially interactive. I know when we had our forum, I brought actual data from the NIH, which supported, they had CT scans of children and the brain matter that changes with screen time, and cell phone use, and the bullying and the addictions like Ms. Hanson was referring to. I brought all of these articles to show parents. And I will tell you, I don't think that there was one parent in that meeting and one parent that hasn't come up to me that has said that this is not a problem and this is not an issue. It's an adult problem too. So I guess what I'm saying is, we have seen a significant, I feel like we've seen a significant drop in disciplines as far as cell phones, even though that still happens. But Orange County, back to that, the articles that stated they went to this bell-to-bell policy, they have seen an increase in grades, a decrease in behavioral issues and referrals. Teachers are environmentally happy. That in itself could be in your recruitment packet. We don't allow cell phones. That is, I think, one of the number one biggest issues that most teachers, when I ask them, why are you leaving education after however many years, or why don't you want to go back to education, it's their top three. I can't discipline my own kids. I give them a referral, they get sent back to classes, whether it's Clay County, Duval, St. John's, or even out of state. My point is, this in itself is going to decrease discipline. You won't have to worry about Snapchat. You won't have to worry about people taking inappropriate pictures in a bathroom. You won't have to worry about meet me after school so we can beat the tar out of each other. You won't have to worry about all of those things. However, the law states that they have to have it available to them. But that doesn't mean that they have to have it at their desk. That doesn't mean that they have to have it in their hand. We know this is unhealthy. This is not good for our kids. And there is data, districts and people statewide are moving to this model, and it's working.
It is working.
It supports it. And we already know the scientific true basis of what it's doing to our kids. They're becoming socially unaware. They're becoming unable to, you have your certain kids that can have a full-on conversation, and you ask them their usage or cell phone usage. A lot of them don't even have social media. But the ones who do, hey, I'm talking to you. You see it all the time. So I just feel as a board, we're gonna get a lot of pushback from this. This is the time that sometimes you have to ruffle feathers and people are gonna be angry about it, but we have data, facts, we have support to support this. So moving forward with this, people are gonna, I have good friends that actually blamed us for this and had a problem with this law. But after I told them and showed them, they are fully aware that this is a problem. They all eventually agree. So our kids are sent to school to learn, and that's exactly what they need to do. They don't need to learn what happened on TikTok yesterday, or who posted a new post, or whose party is what. They can learn all of that after school.
And at our forum, parents were like, we know it's a problem. We do. Like, what the parents there didn't say, oh, don't take their phone away during the day. They were like, please, I have the same problem at home. We're kidding ourselves. Honestly, we're the adults in the room here. We know it's not good for them. We know there's mental health problems with it. All we're asking is they put it in their backpack on silent until the end of the school day.
I think there are 3 board members who agree that we want the phones put away, off, bell to bell.
Yeah.
I'm curious
All I'm asking is that we include the administrators on this conversation.
We
We
did that
did last year.
That was what we did last year. The administrator said it was too hard to control, and that's why
I
we
don't
didn't do
recall
it.
the administrators being involved in the bell-to-bell discussion.
Well, I'm not,
They were
So when
definitely
you
involved in
say-
the law
We
discussion.
talked about it last year and ultimately decided not to go bell to bell because administrators
Yes.
said it's too hard to enforce.
we did.
They said the enforcement piece of it was nearly impossible. So we agreed that we would take this in incremental steps. That's what I was referring to earlier, was last year the compromise was, okay, well,
Right.
this year, let's just do
And-
during class time.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is that we've had 1 year that we have had during the classroom, cell phones away.
Right.
That is a rule throughout the district. That is a rule that teachers have adhered to, that I've visited. I've seen this happening and I'm going to elementary schools. Though I
Is
would
it a rule?
assume, it's always been a rule. And I would assume that handful of students that were caught forgot to turn their phones off or forgot to take it out of their pocket or whatever. Because that's generally, when that phone goes off in a classroom, ooh, you better hear what's going on. And what I'm asking is that as we look at this policy, I am not opposed to this. I'm saying, hey, I would just like to get feedback again
Sure.
from the administrators to see if this is the necessary step forward, if this is obtainable, if this is something that they are able to implement.
The
I mean, yeah.
Madam Chair, can we see if we have consensus for having a phone off and in a backpack
Well, it seems like we do.
with this board member,
It
with
seems
this
like
board?
we do. I think we can, Ms. Clark, did you want to offer anything?
Well, I've talked so much today. I mean, I like to take it all in. I think we all know the health issues. I mean, it makes me cringe watching parents who act like children, even when they're an infant, put it in front of their face, because we know what it's doing to their brain. We know that. I love the bell-to-bell idea, and every teacher and principal I've talked to seems to love it as well. No, have I hit all 43 schools? No. But I do think my only concern is at the high school level, especially if students are driving and taking care of other siblings, do they need a time at lunchtime to make those calls? I don't know. I mean, I would prefer the bell-to-bell, but I also know that we live in a different society, and maybe there is, I would prefer they talk to each other and at lunchtime.
So
But I also know on the bus, for bus drivers, even though they can't have them out, it keeps them quiet while they're on that bus ride.
Yep.
So we've got all sorts
And that's
of
the control of the cafeteria.
little concerns that it would be great to, I don't know what it's gonna take time-wise.
The other thing, in noticing in this, I was going through this, because when we were talking about this last year, my initial concern was smartwatches, and that is part of this. And going through schools, you still see smartwatches all over the place, and it will be an issue. I mean,
It will be an issue, but so are
If their
vapes,
phones
and
are
we
off,
don't
they're
allow
smart.
vapes.
We don't
And
allow
we're having a
vapes.
heck of a time
and
trying
we'll
to
still have them.
I know, so but my point is, we don't make a rule or not make a rule because it's going to be difficult to enforce if we know it's within the best interest of the student.
Just like
And-
no drugs. And we know that.
It's in the best interest of the student, but I'm going to go back to the administrators. They need to be involved with this
So if I could-
again.
Can we try to get consensus or no?
So if I could, just kind of put some context to it, and of course, I'll enforce whatever rule or policy the board decides to do. But I would think we'd be remiss if we didn't kind of point out a couple of things. One, the board needs to define whether or not lunch is in play or not in play. That's a thing. And then the passing periods itself, are we talking about the first bell to the last bell? Like, what exactly are we talking about? No doubt, discipline occurrences will go up significantly. Right, it's a huge cultural change. Cultural change too for parents, I might add. I had spoken to several superintendents about this very issue, and in neighboring, yeah, you wouldn't know a neighbor. The neighboring county more or less said, hey, parents would find that very difficult because they want access to their child, right, wrong, or indifferent. So I think.
We're talking
that's-
during
that's
class
a
time
challenge.
here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
No, class time is off the board now.
no, it's not off the
That's-
board. Teachers can use it in class.
Oh, I see
Maybe.
what you're saying.
I mean, honestly,
No way in.
Well, and I can tell you, my kids go to a school with almost 1,000 kids where they have cell phones off and in the backpack, bell to bell. That includes lunch, that includes translate. They're not allowed to have them out. And it is not uncommon for me to get a phone call from my son during the day, Mom, I forgot my whatever, or Mom, who am I riding home with today? Like, I get that phone call from time to time. I just don't get it from a cell phone. I get it from the school's phone.
yeah.
Would you say that the level of parent involvement and engagement at that school might be different than other schools?
Sure.
And that we serve over 42,000 students from a variety of backgrounds,
Sure.
right? So one school might not be an issue. Let's just take Orange Park Elementary School. Might not be an issue at all at Orange Park Elementary School. Might be a big issue at another school
I wonder,
with different dynamics.
this is a big county too.
Yeah, they're
Orange
big.
County.
Are we saying it's too much of
proven
an
and it
inconvenience to do
works.
what's right for kids?
Well,
So,
I
is that what
hear
we're
what you're
doing?
saying, Mr. Brodsky. I guess I don't understand the difference in that, the school itself, it has phones that a student could use if they needed
Exactly.
to. And if a parent needed to get in touch with their child, they could call
Yep.
the front office or, right? And
I'm
that's,
just trying to point out that perhaps the parents are supportive of the policy, might not be supportive of the policy everywhere else,
oh,
at
well,
a different school environment.
sure, but I'm just saying, like, access is the same,
Yeah.
as far as access to their
There's
child.
always, there's classroom phones.
Yeah.
That's what she's
There's
saying.
other ways
Right.
to contact the student.
Right.
I don't think that's the issue that we're trying to bring.
You're
forward.
concerned about the parents not being supportive of this
Oh.
at other schools. Okay,
Correct.
that's what I
So-
didn't understand.
Oh, wait, okay. I was just talking about putting a phone in the backpack at the beginning of school, away so they're not distracted, so that they can learn and there's no interruptions. Is this conversation, have we placed priority on the fact that some parents might be upset? As a board, we know it is not good for kids. You can go home right now, find your research. Yes, there might be a county that had some problems implementing it. Maybe the parents should have taken it more seriously. If you're saying that as a district, we can't take away something that's bad for kids, we know it's bad for kids, because we're afraid it might be hard to manage it, and we're afraid some parents might get mad at us. We are an educational school board. We are compelled to do what's best for kids. Cell phones in and around kids during that few hours, 7 hours a day. Oh, the average age, how many hours do you guys think that a 16-year-old is on their phone in today's world? Because I happen to know this data.
Too many.
Too many, yeah.
They said 13 hours on their phone. Are we saying at the time when they need to be focused on something that we either do not have the will to make a hard choice, or because we don't want to upset anybody? Clearly for academic purposes. My heart hurts about this conversation. Everyone in this room knows it is bad for kids. Oh, it might be too hard for this person, it might be too hard for me, and the parents might get mad. We are about kids. I'm telling you, Brevard did it over spring break and had only a handful of parents complaining. At our forum, the parents knew it should be shut off at school. If we're saying a kid might need to go to hold of them, yes, Ms. Gilhausen, they can call. But back, not even 10 years ago, I hardly ever got any phone calls in the classroom because people used to talk to their kids before they went to school and they would prepare their day. My heart hurts that we are trying to base a decision that's best for academics, best for kids, best for bullying, on the fact that it might inconvenience or anger someone. I am not a politician. I am a person who loves kids, loves teachers, and knows for a fact I entered the classroom 20 years ago. It'll be 2 years in November. I've been out a year and a half. And cell phones are destructive to our kids. and we're concerned that we might have a rough year of referrals, so what? Then we do, but when we're serious about it, they'll do it, just like they do at Clay High. I mean, I can't say anything more.
I think it's a standard that we have to set. I know I talk about it a lot, you know, whether it's teacher recruitment, whether it's our students, whatever. There's a standard, and we have to raise that bar if we want to be better all the way around.
Yes.
This is,
I think we're all in agreement.
We're all in agreement. That's why I'm
Yeah,
like,
so how about we bring it to a conclusion?
Well, can we,
If we
do you
could.
have some comments
Can we
that you'd like
get a
to make,
consensus or
Mr. Pitt?
Or something? What do we want to do?
Well, I guess it just, take it, what steps are we saying bell to bell, or are we saying at lunch? I think the classroom, we've taken care of that, and is it perfect? No. Is it much better? I think if you've walked classrooms, you've seen that, and I've been in a lot of classrooms this year, and it is much better. So classrooms are correct, we've got that correct. Then we need to go, okay, are you all wanting to decide, eliminate passing times between bells? Maybe that'll help with tardies. Maybe it will. But then lunch, are you including lunch or not? If I could just speak from experience, because I've been at two large schools, Orange Park High and Oakleaf High. Orange Park when there wasn't an Oakleaf. And I'll be honest with you, cell phones help at lunch because it quiets the level down. Students sometimes are looking at their phone. They are communicating with parents. Sometimes parents will know when their lunch is, and then now your high school kids that drive or get home early to take care of siblings or things like that. It is very helpful at some point for the older students to have some communication home with their parents, so that would be beneficial, because a lot of times lunch is right before, you have lunch in sixth period. So there's not much time there before they leave to adjust to whatever the parent needs them to adjust to. So I will say lunch is helpful. I can also say, and I'm just going to be honest here, you know, you have some students that sit alone at lunch, either by choice or not by choice, but if they have their phone, they're on their phone with something to do, and they're not sitting by themselves, so it doesn't look different. So, I mean, I like the lunch as principal, but that's up to you all, whatever you want to do. And then I would encourage you to have parents quote their input as well.
Hold on, can I just say something too, really quick? We talked about silence in the bus and silence at lunch and all this. Well, I just have a question, and I don't mean this in a rude way by any means. Why do our kids need to be silent? We're teaching our kids to be quiet. Here's the thing, they have a 30-minute lunch. How long is it, 30 minutes? 40 minutes now? So, okay, 30-minute lunch. That's their time to talk and communicate. And if I get it, administrators don't want them loud and obnoxious and stuff like that, but that's their time to be a kid. I know there was times growing up where they would flip the flipping charts, and I never agreed with that, because you know what? I get these kids are rambunctious and they've been locked up in a room all day, and you don't want them screaming. But for the most part, not every school has classrooms surrounding them. And if you have that one child that's going nuts, go over there and confront them. But I just disagree with that. I feel like even on the bus ride home, like when I go get my kids, it's loud in my car. And sometimes I am like,
I know, I've heard that.
Lord, yeah. I have to mute it, and they're, you know, but I'm not gonna turn around and be like, you know, you've been locked in a classroom all day, shut your mouths, you know what I mean? So I disagree with that angle, because, and no disrespect here either.
And it's not silence, trust me.
Well, I mean, I know, lower levels, yeah.
noise.
We could go back in our offices and turn on our music and sniff our lavender, you know, like we could get over that after the lunch breaks. But, and then,
Have you ever driven a bus?
well, yeah, I drive a Suburban with kids.
With 16.
But my point is then you have the kid that, does sit by himself. This is the culture that I personally have sought out to change. that is the kid that's bullied. That is the kid that may have
Those are
issues, and
friends.
those are the kids that sometimes do things that we don't want them to do. And so I encourage changing the environment at these schools to reach out to those kids and speak to them. I always tell my kid when they get out of the car, go make a new friend today. Go make a new friend today. Find a new friend. Speak to that person that's just having a tough day. And it works with my oldest. My littlest is just wild. But my point is we have to change the culture all the way around. And if that child is sitting by themselves on their phone, they're never going to look up. They're never going to find that new friend. They're still going to be that outcast because they're not communicating. And we as administrators, we as the district, need to start encouraging behaviors where we're saying, hey, you know, it's the leadership of a school. I'm going to use Brady White as an example because he graduated last year. You know, Brady, you see that kid over there? You're class president. I don't even know if he's class president, but hey, how about we go over there and encourage a conversation? We have to encourage our students to do better, to know that this is the world that we live in, and to be kinder, and to change the culture all the way around. So I see your issues. We can sit here and talk about every issue. But the point is that is something that needs to be addressed, period. It's a culture shift. It's a culture change. It's
Ms.
something
Cooper,
that needs to be
in
done
elementary school,
anyway.
we have buddy benches.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, kids lonely, kids upset. If there's a kid sitting on the buddy bench, other kids have been trained to know that's time to approach the kid on the buddy bench. Somehow between elementary school and high school, I've taught at all of them, that connection's gone.
And I would say that's part of the PBIS program as well. Most schools have a PBIS program, and that's usually involved, that is included in their PBIS program as well. And the last thing I'll say is that 30 minutes sometimes is a long time for students to sit idle.
Since they take maybe 10 to
To eat
eat.
their nuggets
Maybe.
and mashed potatoes and
Yeah, one thing too is that this board has talked a lot about parents' rights and having parent input. And I will tell you that, I talk to parents all day long every day, it's one of the primary functions. And parents will have very strong feelings about this at the high school level for the reasons that we iterated, and I heard several board members acknowledge that. So I would suggest, if I were a principal making this move at my school, I would absolutely survey my parents with a questionnaire and see, you know, which version of this, are you okay with it? Or is there okay at designated time? Are you okay with it being the entire day? That type of thing. So that you can hear from them and allow them to weigh in as you have opted to have them do on so many other things prior to making such a decision without this.
I mean, I hold office hours, we've held parent forums.
But going in.
It's still up not the parents to decide what's best academically for our kids. You know, if a parent, I feel like you should give me a hotline. Let every parent who's upset about a kid having their phone off during school hours call me. I'll sit there all day long. It is how you sell the message. Yes, go ahead.
I'm writing it down.
I'm telling you right now,
It's an honor.
it's about expecting. I will put it at my house. If you don't think I will.
I never had one.
Here's the thing, this is not parental rights.
All right,
When they're
so
at school, it's academic rights.
let's bring this to a conclusion so we can move forward. I think, I heard you say
Yeah.
that you'd like them to have them during lunch earlier.
Not my best
Ms.
idea, but.
I don't mind the bell to bell, but I like the lunch idea,
Okay.
particularly in the junior high and high school.
Okay.
Even the high school, but, just the high school.
And buses.
The bell and so
Yeah, at the end of the school day, they
bus is
can have it
after
on the
bell.
bus, yeah.
But it's still a classroom, is what they're taught, when they're on the school bus. It's
But
still
they
a
are,
classroom.
but they can use their phones.
Mhm.
And that's why you were saying that it's more quiet on the buses now, because they can use their phones. And that is critical though, also. Because if I'm on my way home, and I'm on the bus, and I need to figure out, wait a second, am I going over next door to pick up my sister or brother, or am I going straight home, or whatever? That gives them that little extra time if they need it. I like the idea of doing I would love to do a survey of parents to see what their response is. I would assume that 90, maybe not 90, but 80% of the parents would probably say, yeah, that's not a problem at all. Because my kids don't contact me. That other 20%, yeah, you're gonna always have people who aren't happy about something. But I like the idea of bell to bell. I like the idea, however, for high schoolers to be able to use it during lunch hour,
Okay.
not during transition.
So just kind of refine that idea, because we would know, we would need consensus in order to write it.
That's what I'm working on.
Correct.
To write it.
So I hear two
So-
bell to bell, but allow high school to have
At
it at lunch.
lunchtime.
Okay, what about
High
junior-
school.
What about
High school.
junior high?
Junior high, no.
No,
That would,
they
just
can
high
work
school.
up to that.
They have
That's
to-
something they can look forward to
So
in high school.
junior high, you're saying bell
Bell
to
to
bell?
bell.
Bell to bell.
no
they can
lunch.
practice their soft skills.
Okay. High school, you're saying bell to bell, but lunch.
That's what these two have said. Miss Clark said ditto. Miss Skipper.
I say bell to bell, but they can use them on the bus.
What about?
I didn't know that they couldn't use them on the bus.
I didn't know they could.
I didn't know that that was a thing. Okay, well, I agree with the bus.
Okay.
So if I
I'm not
can,
a lunch person.
what we have here up on the screen, if I'm understanding the room correctly, where it says secondary only, you would like that changed to high school only.
Yes.
And then we remove transition, so that they're not allowed to use it during transition. And that would be, because the information above about all students, that's elementary through high school. But the exception of what you're seeing there, secondary only has the opportunity to use it during lunch and during transition and school-related functions as determined by
Not
administration.
transition.
So what you're asking at this point is we make that high school only
Correct?
and then remove transitions.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can make that adjustment prior to it being advertised.
And
That's not
often
a
in their
problem.
backpacks.
Do we need to put in there somewhere about their freedom to use it on the school bus?
I would leave that on.
There's no, well, at least as far as the House bill, there's nothing in there that talks about being able to use it on the bus or
Is it
anything like
beneficial
that.
for them to use it? Does it help?
Mr. Saban.
And
Oh,
the
go
the other thing, I'm sorry, if I might also, with the new, I'm sorry, what's the Bryce, you might know the software that they use to track the students on the bus? They're using their phones as their IDs to check in on the bus as well.
Oh, that's right.
So-
Mhm. Well,
First bell to last bell.
first bell to last bell would be the, yeah,
So the bus would put that outside of that, so.
yes. The other comment or question, can we notify the committee that did all of these transitions and revisions? That this, the one that he mentioned that came together to do the revisions,
Yes, ma'am.
that we will be making these changes as well?
Absolutely.
And see if there's any response, I'm just curious.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we also let parents know this ahead of time?
Well,
Like,
I
hey,
think
just
that
so
we could do that with a survey.
That's
If
key,
Miss
the
Lola
messaging.
wanted that information.
Well,
But
if we don't need to do a survey, if we're going to be making these changes, I was saying survey the parents prior to making these changes.
Oh.
But there are going to be a lot of changes going out for parents this year.
So
With our media policy, with this policy, they're gonna be aware. They're going to, as soon as we make this decision.
Just two
they'll be
things.
aware.
The media policy is the same as last year. They had to get.
So just for clarity's sake, just make sure we're all saying the same thing. So
everything but lunch.
everything but lunch, but only high school.
Only
lunch.
high school, yeah.
So let's talk about junior high. I haven't taught junior high for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's how I lost my hair.
They will be, the students will
They
be
gotta
upset.
learn
I don't know that the
Mr.
teachers will
Rossi,
be
they
It'd be
upset.
like an award day, they could use them on Fridays.
You are saying no lunch, no nothing at junior high.
Correct.
That's the policy.
Well, and it goes back
Mr.
to,
Krosky, one thing I need to check, sometimes, now when you go through the cafeteria, you can scan your ID or not, it makes the lines go quicker. And so sometimes their ID is on their phone,
yes.
We'll just have to get them a lanyard.
Or they can just tell them their
That's why they're on the
six-digit number,
phone,
that's
they
what
lose
we.
lanyards. I mean, we've been
Well,
doing
that's
lanyards.
Okay.
called
We've been doing lanyards for years.
So
I did
is-
my nursing
are we
back
talking,
in
Mr.
my-
Brodsky, your clarification was all schools?
Also,
Often in the backpack, bell to bell,
with the
Only
exception of lunch.
lunch and high
Lunch for
school.
high school only.
And we want to specifically put in the backpack.
I think so.
it says backpack or purse in most policies. Some girls keep them in their purse.
In our policy, again, the teacher designating an area, some of them do have the phone homes, some of them do have cubbies and tell the students to put them in there. And then I know there's a couple of our schools or a couple of our students,
Yeah.
excuse me, that don't bring backpacks. So in those
Yeah.
situations, I think having the teacher designate.
Right.
I like the teacher designate versus saying backpack.
You know, and there are schools that do this thing during first period, and it's kind of fun, you know? They have this announcement they make. Off and away, and they hold them up in the air. Teachers look at them, they shove it in their backpack in the first period. Now, maybe we could come up with something creative, but that is a first period check like we used to do dress codes. That's what they're doing to help implement it in many schools across the country. They have a plan for it.
Can I ask a quick question relating to the classroom, just and with the phone? If a teacher chooses to use the phones, however, in the classroom, because they don't have enough, whatever, is that still part of this
It's- yeah,
policy
it's-
that's
They're
still
allowed to
okay?
do that.
Correct? The law.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
a
that's,
law.
I understand that, but I'm just making
Was there-
certain.
Was there any other talk by the board about the use of the cell phone by the adult in the room?
You mean, should they be like checking Facebook on their phone? I would say that we should extend
We don't have
that
that opportunity.
expectation
Okay.
to
You
adults.
see the point. The point is, if the adult's in the room using the phone while you're telling the student not to use
Yeah,
the phone.
maybe we should fix the adults then.
I see that as a challenge. The board wants to adopt a policy on that.
Well,
That's a procedure, you can do that.
Go
There
ahead.
is definitely a parent rule, and this is tongue in cheek, but if they're
Teachers
coming
shouldn't be
to
on
the
their cell phones during
cafeteria
class.
to take their child to lunch and sit outside at a picnic table with their child, there should not be a cell phone allowed by the parents either.
Okay. All right, well, Joe, let's focus, because we do have a short presentation right after this. We have proposed allocation changes for 23-24 and 24-25. There's our monthly financial report, our budget amendments, our deletion of certain items. These are all standard practices. Then we have our bid renewal for wastewater at McCray, and then epoxy floor services, and those bid renewals are there. Then we have our third-party contractor for benefits, that's the Bailey Group, and that's their contract-related services there. And then after that, we have a placeholder for custodial services, elementary school, instrument sets, aluminum ramps and stairs, all kinds of bids that were out at that point for business affairs. And then we have the first ever visitors concession stand at Keystone Heights.
When does that
Oh, thank
expected to be
heavens.
done?
This is just the plans, well, we had to draw it out. It'll go out for bid and probably, next year.
Meaning it will be available to?
I don't know that it'll be available for football, I'll get
So probably football of 2025.
5,
Cool beans.
but I will get a schedule.
Then we have the change order for Green Cove Junior High, their window and HVAC replacement. That's a very old building. Orange Park Junior High roof repair, and there's one on that. Then there's pre-qualification of contractors, which is a standard monthly item. Wilkinson Junior High fire alarm replacement contract. Interlocal with the sheriff's office related to gasoline at Middleburg area for emergencies that can use our gas pumps. Then Oak Leaf Junior High, the GMP bid practice, bid package for that, for Oak Leaf Junior High. That's followed by the same thing for Lake Asbury for those additions that are there. And then the last two items are the schematic preliminary final for each one of those projects.
And those will be open in 2025 also? Not 24, 25, 25, 26?
Oh, yeah, they
Right?
haven't even started.
August.
No, I know.
August, yes, school
But-
year 25, 26.
Thank you.
Okay, that was a quick run-through on all of those. I knew that the others would have more excitement and interest, but there is one presentation. There is one presentation about it now. Early on in the school year, the board wanted us to look at resiliency programs. from that. We've done that research. We're bringing forward information that Laura found related to this particular topic. Laura has a quick presentation, and then we'll answer any questions we have related to that.
Turn it on first. Okay. Hi, good afternoon. We've kind of moved from morning to afternoon, but I have to tell you how much I appreciate the conversation because, you know, Ms. Skipper, when you're talking about culture, like, you're speaking my language. I love that because I do feel like building our culture is so important because it also helps with the truancy and keeping kids there. The soft skills that you were talking about with getting kids to communicate with each other, I mean, they need to build relationships and they need to know how to talk to each other. So anyway, last year y'all kind of said, hey, we want you to look into this, we want you to see how it's working, we want to see what's going on. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. So when we look at 7 Mindsets, we've been using it in Clay County since 2019. One of the things that it does is it creates a common language for us. So when we look at like Live to Give, that is talking about citizenship. It is talking about volunteering. It is talking about things that may ring a bell that the First Lady Casey DeSantis is talking to us about. We are connected. That is building your relationships. And what could not be more important than being 100% accountable? Because we want children to be held accountable for their actions. We want adults, right? We want everybody, 100% accountability. So when we look at it, one of the things that stuck out the most is a quote from Casey DeSantis. And if we could get it on, like, I don't know, we need to probably put it up at every single school. With our Resiliency initiative, our goal is to equip students with the skills that will help them learn to persevere through life's inevitable challenges. So when I give you a minute just to digest that, like, that is huge. That is what we talk about, because when kids leave a Clay County school, we want them not only to be a productive citizen, but life is not easy. We have challenges every single day, and when our kids leave, they need to know how to persevere. So when we surveyed schools, we talked to schools, we said, hey, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? We did a whole survey, and a majority of them want to keep 7 Mindsets. And one of the things that they pointed out was having a common language. You know, really, this is from an elementary quote, but it's kindergarten through 12th grade. Everybody's on the same page. And when the students are speaking the same language, and when adults are speaking the same language, that is super powerful. When we up our game and we talk about what is acceptable discourse between people, not everybody's going to agree 100% on everything, and we know that, but we need to teach children how to disagree with someone and have it not turn into something that is violent. We need to disagree respectfully, and we need to learn how to create that culture where they want to be at that school. And that's one thing that 7 Mindsets does help us do. If you have walked Middleburg High School, you will see that they have invested. They are all in 7 Mindsets. They have Live to Give. This is one of the main focus walls whenever you walk in, and it's a good reminder to our students of what they should be doing. And one thing, you know, whenever I looked back and I started looking at the data and like, where have we evolved over 5 years? What does it do? They helped us like through a pandemic. They allowed us to get lessons out to students free of charge. We didn't have that right, but they put it on our website and they allowed us to do that. Another thing that, and Ms. Bonnie, you may need to help me because I want to click on the Resiliency Toolkit. One thing that we had talked about in depth is the Resiliency Toolkit. And if we could go there, this is what's on our thing. Let's slide down a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you look at this is the exact same lessons that we had last year. Nothing's been added, nothing's been taken away. It's in the exact same place that it was last year. Let's see if we can get us back, Ms. Bonnie.
That's the one that the state provides?
Yes, ma'am. That's the Resiliency Toolkit through the state.
So when did we do that? We did that in September or October, and it hasn't been changed?
No, sir, it has not. And I have to tell you, whenever I look at it, one other thing that I want to point out is that whenever they have resource listed and it's K through 3, if you look on that, the actual thing is for 7th grade. So they've listed a resource and they're like, hey, use this in K through 3. But actually where they pulled it from, it's recommended for 7th grade. Another one of their resources is actually 6th, 7th, and 8th, but they're telling us to use it in 3rd grade. I'm going to go to slideshow presentation. We are not. We're almost there. Yes, ma'am. That'd be great. So I just wanted to point that out because I have to tell you, like there was so much, there were just high hopes, right? They're working with USF. We thought that this would be ready, but it's not ready. It's still not ready, and we don't have any future hopes that it will be ready. So whenever you look at it, and this is just like a clear graph that gives you like what the toolkit does. So every lesson they have, that's an X. A gray area is what they don't have. So if we're using this for Rule 6A, it doesn't even come close. As a matter of fact, they've got character listed, and one of Ms. DeSantis' things that she really talks about is honesty and grit and perseverance. They're nowhere in the character lessons at all. So this is not ready. It's disappointing, but it's not ready. So whenever we look at what our schools do and how they use it to build relationships. They use it to build the culture of their schools. Now, another thing that we are looking at is replacing Suite 360, which has our substance abuse, prevention of child trafficking, having it all on this one platform. So you will be glad to know that with this expanded platform, it's going to expand into Tier 2 and Tier 3. So they've got over 150 modules that will allow our school counselors, that will allow our teachers, if they see an issue, they will now have a whole bank to choose from. And in that bank, they have cyberbullying. So when y'all brought that up, I thought, oh my gosh, it's already a module. So that they have, one thing that they hit really hard on is the substance use and misuse, and that's including vaping. And I mean, you know, Ms. Skipper, you have pointed out multiple times, like vaping is an issue, and we really do need to provide more education in that area. But it's got modules on vaping, opioids, fentanyl misuse, and then safety standards, bullying and cyberbullying, suicide prevention, child trafficking, which is the prevention of child trafficking. So we really want to be able to combine those two platforms so our teachers and our staff have easy accessibility to a multitude of lessons. So is it working? Is it not working? So when you look at Tynes Elementary, y'all just saw them at the showcase. So whenever we look at Tynes Elementary, they moved lessons from the resource wheel because they had a resource teacher that taught it all the time. They moved it back into the classrooms. So if you look at their data, now this data is as of April, okay? So it's not end of the year data. So 21-22 and 22-23, that is end of year data. Your 23-24 was taken in April.
Yeah, but that's only a month before the end of the school year.
Yes, ma'am, it is. But I just want to be clear, you know, as to what you're looking at, because you are comparing the end of the year with where they are right now. But if you look at just the reduction in the referrals and the reduction in the OSS, for me, that's the biggest, because if kids aren't there, we cannot teach them. At Oak Cliff Junior High, here's another example. They just began to implement school-wide classroom. And look at that. I mean, the data is very powerful. And so it shows us where we have been and where we are. By implementing these lessons with fidelity, we believe that we will continue to build our culture of our schools, and that we will continue to help children understand that they do need to persevere. They need to have grit. And you know, we talk about a lot of times that if a kid doesn't know how to read, what do? We teach them to read. We have children that always don't know what our expectations are, especially when it comes to behavior. So this is one way to teach behavior, and when I say behavior, it means like what is acceptable? How do we talk to each other? How do we disagree with each other? How do we, Ms. Gilbert, I love when you said, I tell my kids, to go make a new friend today. How do we make friends and how do we keep friends? So working on those things and adding in the key components which are statutorily required, which is the substance misuse and abuse, the prevention of child trafficking. I mean, all those are huge, huge issues. So I just wanted to share some data. We did look at other programs, we looked at other things, and overwhelmingly our schools, surveyed and came back with that they would like to keep 7 mindsets. So these are just some other places because I'm always curious, like, hey, are we the only one in this boat? We're not. You've got Alachua, Baker, Bradford, Columbia, Dixie, Henry. I'm not going to read all those to you, but we are together with a lot of people in the use of 7 mindsets. Do you have any questions about any of the data? Yes, ma'am.
Just curious, you showed us 2 schools, but are you seeing that same pattern at all the schools, or are you seeing
Use it at all schools.
some that may not be making much? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. I've picked out schools that are using it with fidelity, and one of the things that in the survey with the schools, what they had reflected to us is that they would like training on it. So whenever we, requested a bid, I said, I want a very, inclusive training package that wasn't just a one shot and done, but training now and then continued training throughout the year.
Is there any way that we could use this for adults?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Are there schools that don't use it?
There are.
And
there are.
Do we still have to pay for them?
So last year, we did not.
Okay.
This year, when we are combining the Rule 6A
yeah.
and the vaping and the opioid and the fentanyl misuse modules, yes, that they will be required to use it.
But the schools will be required to teach that as well?
Yes.
They have just been using a different platform in which to teach it?
Yes, we have been using Suite 360,
Right.
but the ease of use and having everything in one place makes sense. Plus, whenever we reached out to 7 Mindsets and we're talking with them about that, the plethora of just modules they had, like that they have now added a grief and loss module, which our school counselors will be able to benefit from using. I know that we've got a couple of, like at Montclair, that they have a small group running right now surrounding grief and the loss of a parent or a loved one.
So, what do you mean by combine?
So 7 Minds combine, are you talking about combining the two? Yes. So 7 Mindsets purchased Base Education. So they have merged into one platform.
Okay, because
so now
the
you will have the ability to not only have the 7 Mindsets modules, but have the base modules as well.
Because the topics in 360 are required legislatively, those topics have to be taught?
Yes, ma'am.
So, I guess what I'm asking is, those topics have to be taught. Who's implementing it? And hopefully it's not during core courses. The legislative component of suicide, sex trafficking, drug abuse. So the 7 Mindset ones that keep us legal will now be offered through there. Who implements that at the school for every kid?
So our schools choose. So we have some schools where, like in the elementary level, that the school counselors are going in and teaching those lessons.
Which are the ones that should, right? Because they know how.
Well, I mean,
they're experts.
Teachers know how to teach.
No,
right?
Experts on the topic.
Well, yes,
I had a bad experience. I mean,
with
a suicide one once, so I'm not an expert on the topic. Teachers are not. That's why I'm asking. So we have to do it.
Yes, we do. And so in some of our schools, the classroom teachers, well, like they will give me their plan like up front, because we are required through through Florida State, we have to enter into a portal what is our plan and our method of teaching. And so we do use classroom teachers and we use school counselors.
Because I want people to understand that the required components that are dictated to us by legislation are separate from 7 mindsets. So
Oh, absolutely.
your school, we can't force a teacher to teach 7 mindsets. I mean, if they don't want to teach 7 mindsets, they don't have to teach it.
Correct.
If a school decides, so you brought it in all together. However, the same 7 mindsets program, and I'm glad that they've expanded and you were able to do some research, and unfortunately the state did not
Correct.
do what they
Which is
said,
disappointing.
right? So,
It is.
I mean,
It's
this is
disappointing.
the whole point
Right.
is, but I don't want, sometimes at the secondary level, I don't want anyone being forced to do something in their classroom, which there's legislation about that too. In the Teacher Bill of Rights, we can't force them to do anything other than their core curriculum. And so what I'm trying to make sure is, yes, we need to do the legislative part, which is suicide and all that.
Suicide prevention, yes ma'am.
But it needs to be a choice when we get into the 7 mindset part. And I understand that
And we
we
have
can
to
do
do
it
school's choice, you're correct.
school choice. And I don't want people, I have teachers telling me I have to teach it. That's wrong. We need to better educate teachers. You do not have to teach 7 mindsets. And so it is not compelling at all schools. It's not compelling to all teachers. Not everybody wants to do it. I told you guys the story of me doing Sweet 360. We didn't give parent notice. A lady called because her daughter had tried to commit suicide that summer, and I showed her a suicide movie without telling her parent. And I did ask at the beginning of this year for parents to be notified and sign a paper that we are teaching these topics. I asked 3 or 4 times, I don't know what happened to that, but the point is, 7 mindsets is a choice. The 360 legislatively directed portions are not a
Not a
choice.
choice, correct.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be done in core courses, but if a teacher wanted to do 7 mindsets, they could choose to do it. Can a principal force every teacher in their school to do it? I mean, by law, no, probably not, but I'm just asking for a friend.
Well, for a friend, if you were somewhere where you were being forced, I would seek other employment.
So if your school decides they want to do it and you don't want to do it, are you in trouble?
Ms. Hanson, first off, for your friend, I realize this hypothetically, but for your friend, I would encourage them to work in conjunction with their teammates and with their administrators, because, you know, you and Ms. Skipper both pointed out about the need to build the culture. Mm-hmm. I mean, and there's a need there that we cannot ignore.
I just want to teach you to feel free.
So your friend would need to hypothetically.
It's not really a friend, I was just saying that.
I'm just saying, I assume that they're your friends. You know, if your friend needs to, I would encourage them, one, explore the platform. Mm-hmm. Explore it. See what options there are and see how it can help students.
And that is what principals need to tell their staffs. We need to get people on board. I'm not saying it's a bad program or a good program. We cannot leave a window of doubt. We need to bring people on board. We need to show them the positive impact of using this together and try to get people on board, because literally it's a waste of time if everybody's not. But we should want them to do it.
Agreed.
This is what I'm saying.
Agreed. And because we want to build that culture and we want to help kids. I mean, because, you know, I've got 2 children and they are grown and gone, and when they are out there fighting battles on their own, like, I want them to be able to persevere, and I want them to know how to handle things. And it's the same thing, you know, when I started teaching here, I want what's best for my children, but then I think every kid in Clay County is my child.
Mm-hmm. You know, back in the day, we would teach all this through a literature, through a novel. We used to just put signs up around the school that said,
We used
give.
to teach it through the Bible.
We used to just, all this was incorporated into school culture, but what you're telling me is we have to teach it now.
Yes, ma'am, I am. And I'm very clear on that, and that we do. Just like I said, if we've got a kid who doesn't know how to read, we teach them to read. If we expect more of them, we've got to expect more of ourselves, and we've got to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Laura. I know we're a little bit over time, and that's it for today, Madam Chair.
Okay, so moving forward, next on our agenda. Sorry, let me find my agenda. Oh, in front of me. Questions from the audience? We don't have anybody from the community here. Mr. Superintendent, did you have anything to add?
No comments.
Anything from you, Mr. Blocker?
No, ma'am.
Board members, anything to add?
Unfortunately, I do. I
Okay.
know, this is my day. I promise I won't talk anymore at the next workshop. Well, that's the budget workshop, strike it. So I just want to share about some of the things I learned at the Advanced Finance Forum. The rest of us were unable to make it. I learned a whole lot about what transparency looks like. I learned a whole lot about, I'm going to do this short as I can, okay? How the majority of school board members are, some counties have one board member at each of these things, but listen to the kind of committees people have. Finance Committee, Allocation Committee, One Mill Reference Committee, Audit Committee, Budget Advisory Committee, Construction Committee. Board can pick on organizations to be on the committees to best represent their districts. They have hotlines for third-party reporting for neglect or whatever. They also advertise that 2 or more school board members may be present in attendance for every single committee, so that if I showed up with Ms. Clark to the one you go to that I think's kind of boring, I forget what the name of that one is, but if I go and Ms. Clark's there, then it's been advertised. Lastly, I learned about financial transparency. There's some policies that I'm going to ask about later on, so we don't take up the time, like do we have a cone of silence policy during the bid process? So things like that we can get the answers to. We may or may not, because I'm newer. But the big important thing that I learned about, and I was kind of, I guess, in awe about this, so I stayed after that night and talked for about an hour with a couple of lawyers and a couple of finance officers. The forum covered types of audits and boards being updated about the results of audits. I realized maybe one time I heard about an audit, but I had never actually been given reports or seen the reports of these financial audits.
Do they not get emailed? I know I get them
I
in
get
email.
emails all the time.
Well, I don't know what kind of audits we're doing, because there's actually 12 that some counties do annually, so
Yeah.
just bear with me for a second. So the financial audits, internal control audits, IT audits, compliance audits, operational audits, federal project monitoring audits, and internal account audits. I learned that by law, if a district has more than $500 million, I'm going to read just from this so it goes faster. $500 million worth of funds in a budget must have an internal auditor. One of the most important things that I guess has really struck me at my core was, according to Florida Statute 1001.42, requires the internal auditor to prepare audit reports and findings and report directly to the school board or designee. There were 2 lawyers that talked about this, because if your internal auditor does not report to the board, they're not independent. If the internal auditor doesn't report to the board, when the budget lies statutorily within the school board's legal rights, the internal auditor is not independent, and it opens a window for, according to them, fraud, financial abuse, such as misappropriations, mismanagement of funds. Florida Statute 1001.42 says the scope of the internal auditor shall not be restricted and shall include every functional and program area of a school system. We were warned that it is pertinent that the internal auditor operates independent of the district. I am asking the board to move that the internal auditor, away from the designee, whomever that is right now, and have the internal auditor report directly to the school board as stated in Florida Statute 1001.42. My idea is that the internal auditor will report to our school board attorney and the chair, who will distribute findings to the board. In this way, we have transparency and will safeguard the taxpayer dollars. And I want to remind you what independent means. If an internal auditor is the sole responsibility is to make sure that we are operating within our limits and under law, that internal auditor may not and cannot report solely to somebody who is running the money. It is the board's budget. And as I stated, Florida Statute 1001.42 says, the internal auditor prepares these reports and findings and reports directly to the school board. I am requesting that we follow the advice of a lot of people, lawyers, other districts. Matter of fact, I think every district there said their internal auditor reports to the board. And I'm requesting to get some kind of consensus that our internal auditor can work independently and directly report to the school board. Thoughts?
I agree.
I just have a question about the current mode of operation, because I know I just sat in on our opening audit.
What are we doing currently?
Yeah.
Through the chair, we do not have an internal auditor. What we have is an internal accounts person that oversees the internal accounts within the school. Our budget did not arise to that level of the 500,000 last year, or I guess this year, because of the ESSER funds. We were a little over. But I can tell you, moving forward, probably this year's budget, when we do present, will be under the 500,000, so we will not be required, 500 million, I'm sorry. We would not be required to have an internal auditor. Should the board choose to do that, then that is a position that we would have to add to the allocation document, create the job description, and bring it to the board for approval if that is the wish of the
So
board.
you're saying that ESSER funds don't count? Because our budget, I thought, was
It's
600 million.
534 million.
It does, and I've got to look at the language, if it's actually the general fund, operational funds versus the other funding, because if you'll notice, like our debt service is really part of capital. So even though it shows it's, we have over $500,000 in budget, part of the capital funds gets transferred to the debt service so we can pay those funds.
But I think the law states
It's
it's
a
overall budget.
overall
the
budget is
total
what it
budget.
says.
It's
Yeah.
not you pick and choose what part of the budget you want to pull out.
And they didn't separate it out.
That 400 million.
Right.
So-
And
We
again,
don't
the
have
only
an
reason
internal
we went
auditor.
over was because of the ESSER funding. I believe, standard practice, the last several years, it has been like about $400,000. We're just barely at that $500,000. But again, it doesn't really matter. If the board chooses to have a position like that, then obviously you do.
Well, we have to statutorily if we're over $500 million. We do. And I assumed that we were, because that's what I read on the last
Right.
2 years, 500 and something.
But
And we boast that we're the largest employer with a $500 million budget. So I guess I'm a little bit floored that we don't have any internal auditor, internal controls like that. And then how many audits have we done? Then if we don't have an internal auditor,
So all of the audits that you mentioned are currently being done.
Yes.
Right now, the board chair meets with the auditor. We had our
We
meeting.
just had that meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Is it
Yeah.
the same one every
All
year?
of the ones that you mentioned are currently being done and are in the process of being done right now. All the results of those are all listed. Previous audits are on the website.
Is it the same auditors every year, or do we
It's the
rotate?
state, the state comes in and
No,
audits us.
well,
No, that,
the IG does every 3 years, right? The big one.
every year.
Right, the operational audit and the single audit is done once every 3 years by
Right.
the Auditor General. This year is the Auditor General who's visiting and will be reviewing the 23-24 school year
Yeah,
activities. Previously, this is statutorily required, 3 years, we are required to hire a separate agency or a separate company to come in and audit our books. And
Yes.
that is done through an RFP process as well. So-
I don't know if this will surprise you, but there's a lot of people who don't wait till the 3rd year that they have, and I have a whole list I can share with everybody about what counties are doing annually, and they never use the same auditor 2 years in a row because they tend to focus on the same things. This is a warning sign to me that we don't have, yes, we have to do what we do by law, because I learned that there as well every 3 years, But there are people that do these things every year, and we have a $500 million budget.
I don't know
With all
about
due
the,
respect,
sorry.
with all due respect, there are other audits that are being done, and it's done by different parts of the agency, DOE, like the federal audit. That is done by the federal side of DOE, and they do come in and they review all the grants and everything that's being done. We do on-site and we do desktop. As far as IT, there is an audit that's being done annually, and it is reviewed by the Auditor General, as well as, it is the Auditor General that comes in, that does the IT audit, and that's done pretty much every year.
Do we pay someone to do that ever? An
Auditor
outside-
General, no, we do not.
Any of our audits, an outside auditor, do we
We
pay?
do pay for the 3 years, the
Well,
first 2 years, that is
That's
cost on the
required.
district. As far as the FTE, we do have audits on the FTE, and they do come in once every, I believe it's 2-3 years, the same thing. In the past, they've been coming in every year. However, because of staffing and those types of things, it's the Auditor General, it's the state. They do come in and do audit all of our documents. In June, I usually will bring the copies of those audits, but you do get a copy of them when the audit report is released.
That's what's required of us. That's not what I was actually asking about.
Can you
How
check
about-
on the
why don't
state
we-
statute?
Like boards hire people to come in and audit. They pick what kind of audit, they hire people outside.
We have a $600,000 budget, and the state statute says anything over 500,000. I want to make sure as a board member that I go on record that we comply with the law. So if the law states that we need an auditor, can we make sure of the number and can you let us know?
Yes, ma'am, I can research that. So the statute does say 500 million, so 500,000. There are obligated funds that sometimes have been interpreted, different districts interpret that as not being, because they're obligated, there's a debt service that's being paid. But the board, it's at your discretion if y'all want to hire an internal auditor. Y'all have the discretion to do that. Some districts do that. And the statute does say 500,000, so I would work with, if that's something that the board's interested in doing, I would work with Mr. Brodsky and see about putting that as part of your, future hires, since we're going into a budget cycle, and do that. There are some, and again, my only hesitancy is there is a debt service, there is interpreted that debt services generally is not part of your operating budget because those are obligated funds, those are funds that have already been targeted. It's not really our funds to spend because it's targeted to paying back a debt service, but it sounds.
It's a revenue draw. So, right, I mean, we're still getting paid that whether we have debt or not. You still are accumulating.
It literally just
That's
said
correct.
a budget over 500 million. And
Right.
nobody said, well, unless it's this or this or this.
Well,
That's why we need an attorney.
Right, well, and like Dr. Legecko said, our budget was over 500
Yeah.
million. I'm gonna say 500,000, it was under 500 million. So, I mean, y'all are a growing school district, so the assumption is y'all are you're not shrinking, you're growing, so.
How about this, in the interest of time, that for the budget workshop, we bring forward all of the audits that are currently being done, so you can see the work that's being done there. If the board decides after that they want to do something in addition to that, then that's great, we'll go ahead and we'll add that in. But not knowing what we currently do would be the starting point.
Mr. Brodsky, when they were talking about is an independent, somebody who's not required, somebody who's not paid by the district,
I totally understand.
they're
the
talking
concept.
about somebody who keeps an eye on our budget
But
internally.
they're going to be paid by the district no matter what.
No, they will be, but it's an independent, they don't respond to anybody, there's a lot of laws about them, they have access to every file, every person. What I'm talking about is much different than what we're talking about right
It's
here.
checks and balances.
This is a position with no strings attached, can do whatever they want, audit, funds, and reports only to the board to make sure that the independent is verifying what the board does legally.
So it's a person, it's not a firm?
Huh?
So you can have it so what Mrs. Hanson, what you're describing is an internal auditor that reports directly to the board.
Right.
Or to the attorney. So, and there are thresholds where this is required.
Right.
It sounds like we're near that threshold, but, based on what Dr. Legecko, and I have not looked at the budget number, I don't know if they're available yet, but it looks like We could be under that 500 million, but that is something that y'all as a board can work with the superintendent and decide to have an internal auditor that reports directly to the board. That is an option. Some school districts do that. That is an option. That is not required unless you're over the 500 million or more.
Yes.
So it sounds like we're teetering there where we could be, so you may be at a point where you're gonna have to do that anyway. So, if we go over the 500 million, again, sometimes you don't know until you get into the budget cycle, right? So generally what I have seen is when school districts are going over, then they're required to, they must, follow those procedures. But I think right now it's optional. And if the board decides, looking at these audit information, if y'all want to put some additional controls in or anticipate that, then we can.
I think for for the budget workshop, if we could have the audits, like you said, and then Mr. Blocker, if you could give us a formal opinion on what is the exact financial threshold? Are we able to, do you consider federal money or debt service money? Do you not? Like, if you could give us a legal opinion.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Does that suffice for everybody for today?
And just know that the board can hire an independent, way away from everything, right? Just to look after our money. That's, a lot of districts do that, so.
It's just the checks and balances.
I'd have to decide on that one first. With that. And I don't agree with the outside CPA firm focusing on certain things, and that's why you have to change it constantly, because they're required to keep their license to do certain things.
Yeah.
And the fact that we stick to a certain company is usually because we're limited to only certain CPA firms do district schools.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was like in outside industries, everything is different. And you want somebody that's familiar with that knows what to look for and isn't blindsided, and they can help you each year better plan. And so whatever, the water and the bridge. The only thing I had to comment on is we can talk all day about the code of conduct and what should be in it. But I'm a little bothered when we hear that I want to review our procedures if we can do something different. Because we constantly hear that the students haven't read the code of conduct. Even though there's a sheet that they've signed off on, they don't know what's in it. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can review how to better make sure that that parent or guardian or whoever has gone over that with them.
I can certainly do that.
Okay.
Ms. Skipper?
Yeah, I had the opportunity over the last week to go to a conference, leadership conference. And I will tell you, by all of the conferences that I have been to, this is by far yet the best, the most, I learned so much. Normally, we all know that if you don't entertain me for 15 minutes, then I'm at my wit's end and my ADHD kicks in. But I will tell you, everything that they taught was so encouraging and all about education and the future of America. And I won't bore you with all the passionate talk, because it might be too much for some people. But I will tell you that when we go back to things like 7 mindsets and a culture that has to change, and you're looking at the United States and the state of Florida all at a whole in education, and looking back to the things that we did do right with classical education and model, and how it's evolved to what we have now, implementing programs like 7 mindsets or things differently like that. I just want to let the board know that there are a few things that I'm going to be bringing forward to all of you in hopes to change our future and what is the direction that it's headed, like patriotism. I went to the Vietnam Veteran Assembly yesterday, and on one of the documentaries, they talked about how they asked people, did we even go to war in Vietnam, or did we even touch ground in Vietnam? And the answer was no, we didn't. If we're not educating our children, especially about our history and patriotism and loving our country and bringing that back into our schools, which we do a really good job in Clay County. I'm not saying we don't. I know our civics is really good. But I am going to be looking for, sorry, Mr. Frosky, but I am going to be looking for more ways to bring patriotism back into our schools more than we already do. I love that we do the Purple Star schools and our military schools, but I feel like we could do more. We could be better, especially being a military town. So there's some things that I will be bringing forward soon. But also, you know, bringing our families back around, like I said, even with the cell phone policy, that makes our parents more aware, more involved. That brings more values and character traits back to our kids and ultimately changing. The little changes make the biggest difference and being consistent with it. So I just want to encourage all of us to remember that even though we may be getting pushed back, like Ms. Hanson said, it's what's best for our kids. And adults matter. I mean, parents matter. Do not take that away from what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is ultimately the adults don't matter. It's our kids that matter. So just bringing back positive values and character traits to our kids is something that I want to do, and tackling this vaping issue. I've got some ideas that I want to bring to the board as well, but I'm going to have a few meetings before then, just so I can get some consensus with some of the district to see what their thoughts are on some of my ideas. But yeah, I wanted to let you guys know that we've got to make some changes, because speaking to board members across the United States and what everybody from California all the way up to New York, professors, Harvard professors were there. Everybody from every different background was there. Moms were there, parents, educators, school board members. I met some of our fellow neighboring counties there. They had some great ideas, second in the state, but their culture, the things that they do to implement their culture, it's not only just at a school, it's not only just at in a district, it is well known within their whole district, the overall attitude change and culture. So I won't bore you with any more because I know everybody wants to get out of here, but I'm just letting you know that there are things that we do really, really good, but I feel like we need to do better in some aspects because it's only going to make us better. So that's it.
Some counties have vape dogs. Did you know that?
That's actually, look. So, well, now that you said this, sorry, I'll be really short. But,
I just learned about it.
I wanted to talk to the district about this because they're like $25,000 versus
And they walk them through the
millions,
schools.
and they actually work. So that is something that I wanted
I think the sheriff's office has it.
I was gonna say
to talk about all of that with you, but they're better than the actual vape machines that they have at like bars. Anyways, so that's coming down the pipe.
Ms. Fuller?
No, I've already said, no comment.
Okay. All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.